Chapter 417. In an instant, the words that Lin Sun would be a disgrace if he didn't get the first place spread all over the place. For a moment, many instructors and students looked at Lin Sun with complicated eyes. They never thought that Lin Sun was still dissatisfied with class number 9, which had always been at the bottom of the rankings, even though it had achieved such a dazzling achievement. Disgrace? That was too shocking. Even Shun Tuo couldn't help but smile bitterly. Lin Sun didn't know whether he was arrogant or ambitious. Ha, it's so lively here. Did something sensational happen? Amidst the uproar, a voice that sounded like muffled thunder echoed through the main hall on the first floor of the Spirit Refinement Tower. Immediately, a group of people came from the entrance of the hall. The leader was an old man in a dark purple robe with meticulous hair and beard, who had been in a high position for a long time. Suddenly, the uproar fell into silence. The one who recognized him was the deputy dean of the Spiritual Tattoo Yard, a well-known middle-rank spiritual tattooist, Chu Shanha. In the Spiritual Tattoo Yard, Chu Shanha's status was so high that he was second only to the dean and a few others. It was worth mentioning that he was also a powerful elder of the Chu clan, one of the 3 spiritual tattoo families. Nice to meet you, Dean Chu. Shun Tuo and others came forward and told the result of the assessment to Chu Shanha with a smile. Suddenly, Chu Shanha couldn't help but exclaim, "No wonder it's so lively. It's really amazing that Class 9 can get such a result." Lu Hui, Fan Jiqiu, Yang Jingyao, and the other students of Class 9 revealed proud expressions when they heard this. "Dean Chu, we can get such a result this time, thanks to Teacher Lin." Lu Hui grinned. "Oh, Teacher Lin." With a smile on his face, Chu Shanha fixed his eyes on Lin Sun almost instantly and said, "As early as many days ago, I heard that Teacher Lin has a unique way of teaching. Now it seems that your reputation is well-deserved." "Dean Chu, you flatter me." Lin Sun responded indifferently. The appearance of Chu Shanha reminded him of Chu Haidong, who had been angered to the point of vomiting blood, and the contest about who was the idiot. In the end, everyone in the Forbidden City knew that Chu Haidong, who was completely crushed by the 9 Dragons chant, became a well-deserved idiot. This matter was also a joke in the Forbidden City today. It could be seen how great the impact was. It could be said that after this matter, Lin Sun had completely offended the Chu family. Under such circumstances, facing Chu Shanha, who suddenly appeared, Lin Sun had unconsciously become vigilant. This was just the assessment of a group of beginner-level spiritual tattooist students in the small building C, which was not very grand. However, Chu Shanha appeared, which seemed a little unusual. "Instructor Shaolin, you don't have to be humble. To be honest, I'm also very curious about your attainments in spirit runes," Chu Shanha said with a smile. After all, it's only been a month, and he was able to raise Class C9 to 5th place. This isn't something that any instructor can do. As soon as this remark came out, everyone present agreed. Indeed, until now, all the teachers and students only knew that Lin Sun had caused the 9 Dragons chant, which caused a sensation in the Forbidden City and made him a young spiritual tattoo master of the young generation. But no one knew which level Lin Sun's attainments in spirit runes had reached so far. However, Chu Shanha's words seemed to be praise, but it made Lin Sun more vigilant. One who was unaccountably solicitous was hiding evil intentions. What was more, he had offended the Chu family behind Chu Shanha. How could Chu Shanha be generous enough to praise his enemy? This was obviously impossible. Sure enough, Chu Shanha's next words confirmed Lin Sun's speculation. He said with a smile, "I have a suggestion. Why don't you take this opportunity to show your wonderful means in spirit runes, so that all the teachers and students present can also see your unparalleled style?" "Wonderful. What Dean Chu said is exactly what we want. Yes, I've been wanting to see your style for a long time, but it's a pity that I haven't had a chance. If I can achieve my wish this time, it couldn't be better. Teacher Lin, show me your skills." Teacher Lin. As soon as Chu Shanha's words fell, it aroused a warm response from the audience. Not only those students, but also some teachers opened their mouths, looking expectant and excited. Only a few people, including Shun Tuo, realized something. They looked at Chu Shanha and Lin Sun with a touch of worry on their faces. They also remembered the grievances between Lin Sun and the Chu family. They were even sure that the purpose of Chu Shanha's proposal at this time would not be so simple and pure. All eyes were on Lin Sun, as if he didn't agree at this moment, he would let everyone down and become a sinner. Lin Sun was silent. Because of Lin Sun's silence, the originally lively atmosphere suddenly became a little strange. Teacher Lin, a student of Class 9, opened his mouth. Before he could finish speaking, Lu Hui glared at him and interrupted. Green Chong, shut your mouth. Who are you two but into Instructor Xiao Lin's affairs? It could be seen that Lu Hui was also keenly aware that something was wrong. What's the matter? Does Teacher Lin feel embarrassed? Chu Shanha asked patiently with a smile. Lin Sun immediately smiled and no longer remained silent. He looked at Chu Shanha. Since Dean Chu has kindly invited me, it would be too unreasonable for me to refuse. Chu Shanha seemed to have been waiting for Lin Sun's words for a long time. He immediately laughed. I know Teacher Lin won't let you down. As he said, he looked at a middle-aged man in gray beside him and said, arrange a refining task for Teacher Lin. The middle-aged man in gray immediately replied, Teacher Lin is a certified spiritual tattoo master. Now he is on the 5th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower. There is a refining task that can satisfy him. Chu Shanha nodded with a smile. Let's do it. In a few words, he directly settled the matter. From beginning to end, he never consulted Lin Sun's opinion again. This was obviously a premeditated plan. Shin Tuo's heart sank. He completely concluded that this time Chu Shanha was absolutely prepared for Lin Sun. Not only Shan Ta, but also some other teachers and students present also vaguely noticed that the atmosphere seemed to be a little strange, and they were very surprised. The 5th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower, that's a refining place specially prepared for middle-rank spiritual tattoo masters, and the refining tasks are also prepared for middle-rank spiritual tattoo masters. Dean Chu, this arrangement seems a little inappropriate. A teacher couldn't help speaking out. Chu Shanha's face suddenly darkened, and he said unhappily, you underestimate Teacher Lin too much. He is the most outstanding spiritual tattoo master of the young generation. At that time, he also caused the vision of 9 dragons chant. He is famous in the Forbidden City. How can a talent like him not go to the 5th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower? His voice was sonorous, and his expression was generous. It seemed that he was crying out for Lin Sun, which made many teachers and students feel very emotional. Yes, Teacher Lin was not an ordinary spiritual tattoo master. Hearing these words, Lin Sun couldn't help but flash a trace of coldness in the depths of his eyes. The more Chu Shanha said so, the more it proved that this arrangement was absolutely malicious. Let's go to the 5th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower. We can also take this opportunity to see Teacher Lin's demeanor with our own eyes. It seemed that Chu Shanha was afraid that Lin Sun would go back on his words. So he left these words and walked out of the hall with everyone. If you feel that the situation is not right, just refuse it. When Shun Tua passed by Lin Sun, he suddenly reminded him by voice transmission. Obviously, he also saw Chu Shanha's ulterior motives. Lin Sun smiled and didn't say much. The 5th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower. The space inside was very large, like a huge square cut in the tower, vast and magnificent. Here, every inch of the spiritual formation was densely covered, and everywhere was overflowing with a terrible, taboo aura, which was frightening. In the spiritual tattoo yard, only those who were above middle-rank spiritual tattoo masters could successfully step into this place. Therefore, for the teachers and students who came with Chu Shanha this time, it was the first time for them to come here. As soon as they entered, they couldn't help but feel shocked. The ground, walls, stone pillars, and all kinds of furnishings in the hall were all shrouded in terrible and mysterious spiritual formations, which made them look extremely sacred. Even Lin Sun narrowed his eyes. In his eyes, there were at least more than 100 terrifying large spiritual formations in the spiritual cultivation tower. If one broke in without permission, Even a strong practitioner of Tao Insight Realm would be killed in an instant. Would Chu Shana dare to kill him here? Suddenly, a strange idea came to Lin Sun's mind, but he immediately shook his head. This situation would never happen unless Chu Shanha was crazy. What a terrible sword intent. Armor with spiritual tattoos. 9 Xiao flowers are imprinted on it. The sword ridge is suppressed by the power of 9 palaces, and the hilt is wrapped with golden scales. It seems to be the sword of apocalypse. There was an uproar. Lin Sun looked up and saw a 3-foot-long sword inserted straight in the center of the hall. The sword was full of purple air, and 9 magnificent and holy Xiao flowers appeared on the sword body, giving out an indescribable momentum of grandeur, antiquity, and majesty. It seemed that it was not a sword, but an immortal king, standing from the depths of time to the present, disdainfully looking down on the world. At this time, all the teachers and students stared at the sword with excitement, trance, and even deep awe. On the side of the sword, there were 3 or 4 old men who were studying something. When they saw Chu Shana arrive with so many people, they were all stunned and immediately showed displeasure. Chu Shanha, how can you bring people in at will in such an important place? An old man bluntly accused Chu Shanha. Chapter 4:18. The 3 or 4 old men were all senior masters of spiritual tattoos in the yard. They were stationed on the 5th floor of the spiritual tower all year round. Therefore, Chu Shanha didn't care about the blame at all. He laughed and said, "Don't be angry, everyone. I'm here to bring you good news." "What good news?" An old man frowned. Chu Shanha pointed at Lin Sun and said, "This is Lin Sun, the young talent who caused the vision of 9 dragons chant when we certified a spiritual tattoo master a few days ago. He is specially employed as a first-class instructor by our department." "Lin Sun, is this the little guy? He looks really young." The old men were all surprised. They glanced at Lin Sun, and the anger on their faces eased a lot. Obviously, they also attached great importance to Lin Sun. "I brought Lin Sun here this time to solve your problem," Chu Shan has said with a smile. As soon as these words came out, the old men suddenly burst into an uproar with shock and anger on their faces. "What do you mean? Are you going to let him solve the problem of repairing the Sword of Apocalypse?" Someone questioned. "Ridiculous." Someone was indignant. "This decision is too rash. Chu Shanha, don't you know how powerful the Sword of Apocalypse is? How can a young man who has just become a spiritual tattooist be able to solve it?" Someone accused harshly. As soon as these words came out, the teachers and students who had followed Chu Shanha were also in an uproar with shock on their faces. Sure enough, this is the most powerful magic weapon in the hands of the current Empress, Sword of Apocalypse. This is an extremely powerful armor with spiritual tattoos. Sword of Apocalypse. Dean Chu wouldn't want to use this item to verify Instructor Kobayashi's attainments in spirit runes, right? Everyone looked surprised and doubtful. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes. He was sure that this Sword of Apocalypse was the means by which Chu Shanha would deal with him. High-grade armor with spiritual tattoos, and it was owned by the current Empress. Even those old men couldn't repair it. It could be imagined how troublesome the problem of the Sword of Apocalypse was. Humph! Suddenly, Chu Shanha snorted coldly and immediately suppressed the uproar of the audience. In the silence, Chu Shanha said in a deep voice, "Just because you can't repair it doesn't mean that others can't repair it. Why? Do you think that Instructor Lin doesn't even have the qualification to repair the Apocalypse Sword?" Just these words alone caused the expressions of those old men to change, and one of them couldn't help but say, "We don't think so. It's because this Apocalypse Sword has great implications. If any mishaps occur, then the consequences aren't something that anyone can bear." That's right. It won't be long before the Empress' 300th birthday. The Imperial Palace has already issued a death order. If the Apocalypse Sword isn't repaired, when he saw that the other old men were about to refute him, Chu Shanha's face sank, and he interrupted them. "Everyone, I only have one question. Have all of you found a way to repair the Apocalypse Sword?" The elders were all speechless. Chu Shanha said expressionlessly, "If you can't do it, Why can't you let instructor Kobayashi have a try? The old men looked at each other. At this time, Shintuo's voice suddenly sounded in Lin's ears. He was extremely anxious. Lin, don't agree. The Apocalypse Sword is an important weapon of the royal family. A few years ago, because of an unknown accident, it suffered a fatal damage. The current empress has invited many masters to repair it, but no one has been able to repair it so far. Lin was shocked. It turned out that there were so many reasons. Shun Tuo continued. The headquarters of the Commune of Spiritual Tattooists, the Academy of Spiritual Implements of the Empire, and some famous spiritual tattooists in the Empire have been invited by the royal family to repair the Apocalypse Sword, but so far no one has succeeded. In many people's opinion, the Apocalypse Sword can never be repaired again. Lin Sun secretly took a breath. Chu Shanhe was so vicious that he wanted to hit him with such a tricky problem. If he couldn't do it, the consequences would be absolutely unimaginable. Shintuo's voice was so hidden that it didn't attract other people's attention. Just when Lin Sun was about to say something, Chu Shanhe said in a low voice, "Everyone, there's no need to hesitate. I've already sent someone to the Imperial Palace to report this matter to Instructor Lin. Then, he'll make a move and help resolve this problem. If you continue to obstruct him, then you'll be violating a taboo." Hiss! There was a sound of gasping in the audience. Whether the instructors or the students, their faces suddenly changed with horror. They were finally sure that Chu Shanhe deliberately targeted Lin Sun and wanted to use this matter to hit him. This was a problem that even a group of senior spiritual tattooists couldn't solve, but Chu Shanhe wanted to throw this hot potato to Lin Sun and secretly sent someone to inform the imperial family. Obviously, he didn't intend to give Lin any way out at all. Terrible. It was terrible. Until now, many people realized that Chu Shanhe must have planned all this before coming to the spiritual refining tower this time. The most frightening thing was that Chu Shanhe used an open and above-board scheme, which made people unable to blame him at all. This method was really ruthless. Could Lin Sun still refuse? Obviously, it was impossible. He had promised Chu Shanhe before. What was more, this matter had been reported to the imperial family by Chu Shanhe. Once Lin Sun refused, he would not only offend Chu Shanhe, but also the imperial family. This was the most terrible thing. For a moment, the whole audience was silent. They were all shocked by Chu Shanhe's means. Even Lin Sun didn't expect that in order to target him, Chu Shanhe had made such a sophisticated and thoughtful plan. Originally, Lin Sun thought that when he came to Green Deer School, he should be most afraid of the revenge from the two top forces of Zhou clan and Qin clan. But obviously, he ignored Chu family and underestimated Chu family's determination to retaliate against him. Lin Sun, you won't blame me for overstepping my authority and helping you with this matter, will you? Chu Shanhe laughed and said. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and wanted to smash Chu Shanhe's hypocritical face with a punch. But in the end, he smiled and said, "Dean Chu, have you heard about what happened when I was certified as a spiritual tattooist?" Chu Shanhe was stunned, and then his face changed slightly imperceptibly. He seemed to have guessed what Lin Sun was going to say. Lin Sun said with a smile, "At that time, there was a man named Chu Haidong who said that he would use the certification of the 9 tablets of Dragon Gate to prove who was ignorant and who was a fool between me and him." Chu Shanhe's eyebrows were filled with a touch of gloom. All the others present were also frightened. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would mention this matter at this time. This was a shameful scandal and scar for Chu Shanhe and even the whole Chu family. Lin Sun didn't seem to notice the change in the atmosphere. His smile became more and more warm and brilliant. He said slowly, "I think you know the final result. So, are you sure you want to use this method to let me show my skills? P.S. It's been a long journey. As soon as I got home, I was so sleepy that I slept until night. It's a little late to update. Don't worry. I'll continue to write after I'm full." Chapter 419. Lin Sun's words were full of provocation. Taking Chu Haidong, who had become a laughingstock, as an example to provoke Chu Shanhe was no different from slapping Chu Shanhe in the face. After all, Chu Shanha was also a member of the Chu family. According to seniority, he was Chu Haidong's uncle. All the people present couldn't help but gasp. Lin Sun was too bold. They didn't know that many people also thought Lin Sun was bold when he beat up the disciples of the Song family and the Hua family and wanted to kill Hua Wuyo. Lin Sun was also regarded as bold when he humiliated Chu Haidong and Chu Yunkong at the headquarters of the commune of spiritual tattooists. But until now, Lin Sun was still alive and kicking, living a good life. In other words, anyone who knew Lin Sun's past history knew that it was normal for him to do so. It would be strange if he didn't do so. In the face of such naked provocation, no matter how sophisticated Chu Shanha was, he was so angry that his face tightened at the moment, and a touch of coldness emerged in his eyes. The atmosphere was tense in an instant. Many people were on tenterhooks and worried for Lin Sun. But just a moment later, Chu Shanha suddenly laughed and patted Lin Sun on the shoulder. He said with emotion, "The younger generation will surpass the older. Since you are so confident, let's take this opportunity to see your elegant demeanor." His laughter was hearty and his words were enthusiastic, as if nothing had happened just now. Lin Sun had to admire that this old guy was not only hypocritical, but also extraordinarily thick-skinned. But after hearing these words, everyone's heart sank. They knew that Chu Shanha had made up his mind to let Lin Sun take over this hot potato. Once Lin Sun failed, the consequences would be unimaginable. "Dean Chu, aren't you making things difficult for me?" "Yes. It's not about seeing Lin Sun's elegant demeanor. It's obvious that he wants to embarrass him." After all, the students of Class 9 were young and impetuous. They couldn't bear this kind of humiliation and spoke out indignantly. Chu Shanha's face darkened. But before he could speak, Lin Sun stopped those students first. "Shut up. What do you know? This is Dean Chu's kindness. He wants to give me a chance to prove myself." His words were harsh. Although the students didn't understand, they could only suppress their anger when they saw instructor Kobayashi getting angry. The corners of Chu Shanha's mouth twitched slightly. He always felt that Lin Sun's words seemed to be satirizing him. He couldn't help but feel angry in his heart. He was waiting to see Lin Sun's performance later. From the first day Lin Sun entered the yard, he had been thinking about how to deal with this young man who had brought so many rumors to the Chu family. Now that he had finally found an opportunity, Chu Shanha would not be easily angered. On the contrary, he had made all the plans. As long as Lin failed, he would take further action to ruin Lin's reputation and cause him a lot of trouble. Apocalypse sword was the most precious treasure in the hands of the Empress. If Lin Sun couldn't repair it, he would offend the royal family. Just thinking about the severity of the consequences made Chu Shanha extremely excited. "Instructor Kobayashi, shall we begin?" Chu Shanha smiled. Lin Sun nodded and turned to the center of the hall. No matter if it was Shun Tuo's group or the students who had followed him here, all of them revealed a sliver of reluctance when they saw that he was actually going to do this. In their opinion, Lin Sun's action was tantamount to falling into the trap carefully made by Chu Shanha. Why didn't he refuse? Everyone was confused and worried. They even regretted that they shouldn't have agreed with Chu Shanha's idea. They just wanted to see Lin Sun's performance, but they caused him to fall into such a situation. But no matter how regretful they were, it was too late to say anything now. Apocalypse Sword was a powerful armor with spiritual tattoos. Even a group of senior spiritual tattooists were helpless to repair it. What about instructor Kobayashi, who had just passed the qualification of a spiritual tattooist? Could it work? "Young man, it's not too late to give up now." When Lin Sun came to the Apocalypse Sword, an old man couldn't help reminding him. Other old men nearby also showed a touch of pity. They were all senior spiritual tattooists. They knew very well how serious the damage suffered by the Apocalypse Sword was, and the possibility of repair was minimal. If Lin Sun forcibly repaired it, it might even completely destroy the Apocalypse Sword. Because of this, these old men didn't dare to try it so far, lest the Apocalypse Sword be destroyed in their own hands. In this way, it was equal to completely offending the royal family and the current empress, who would be able to bear the consequences. Before, they were a little dissatisfied with Lin Sun's intervention in this matter. But when they witnessed what happened just now, they immediately knew that Lin Sun was obviously driven into a trap by Chu Shanha. There was no dissatisfaction in their hearts, only pity. Let's take a look first. Lin Sun smiled, but his eyes had already fallen on the Apocalypse Sword. This sword was extremely strange. It was 3 feet long and 1 palm wide. The sword body was shimmering with purple air, and 9 magnificent and holy Ziyao flowers appeared. Its aura was magnificent, ancient and majestic, as if it had survived from time to time. It was immortal and brilliant, looking down on the world. There was no need to guess at all. Just from its aura, one could know that it must be a legendary magic weapon. But in Lin Sun's view, no matter how wonderful the aura of this sword was, in the final analysis, a piece of armor with spiritual tattoos refined by a spiritual tattooist. As long as it was refined, it could be repaired. It was just a matter of method. Lin Sun stood there and stared at it for a while. His mind had become calm, and his angular and delicate face had been replaced by concentration and seriousness. At this moment, he exuded an indescribable calm momentum. Although he was silent, he had a kind of calming power. The atmosphere in the hall was quiet. All eyes were fixed on Lin Sun. The air seemed to be still at this moment. No one disturbed Lin Sun, but everyone's face was full of worry. Of course, only Chu Shanha had a wisp of a smile on the corners of his mouth. Obviously, it was an attitude of taking pleasure in the misfortune of others and waiting to watch a good show. As time went by, Lin Sun stood there motionless, as if he had become a sculpture. This made many teachers and students anxious. If possible, they really wanted to remind Lin Sun to retreat in the face of difficulties and not to stubbornly fight with Chu Shanha. However, Lin Sun was obviously in deep thought. No one dared to disturb him at this time. After half an hour, when everyone's mood was extremely heavy, Lin Sun suddenly moved. He raised his right hand and grabbed the hilt of the Sword of Apocalypse. No! Next to him, an old man's face suddenly changed. He exclaimed and stopped Lin Sun. Others' faces also changed. What was Lin Sun going to do? Was he really going to try to repair the Sword of Apocalypse? In that case, if he failed, the consequences would be very serious. Since its repair, there is no reason not to touch the Sword of Apocalypse. Get out of the way. Don't stop Coach Lin. Chu Shanha scolded. Hearing this, everyone cursed in their hearts. This old guy really wanted to push Lin Sun into the pit completely. Lin Sun didn't pay attention to Chu Shanha, nor did he notice the worried eyes cast behind him. At this moment, he seemed to turn a deaf ear to everything. His eyes were fixed on the Sword of Apocalypse, and his right hand quietly grasped the hilt of the sword wrapped with strands of golden scales. Then he closed his eyes, and the huge perceptual power spread out like fine silk threads, covering the whole Sword of Apocalypse. For 3 hours, Lin Sun didn't speak. He held the hilt of the sword with his right hand, motionless. The sword was shimmering with purple air. The 9 Ziyao flowers were holy and magnificent, filling his straight figure like a dream. Just when everyone was restless from waiting, Lin Sun finally took action again. Without looking back, he said indifferently, "Give me 7 days." As soon as these words came out, all the people present were shocked. They didn't expect that at the last moment, Lin Sun not only didn't give up, but also agreed. "Can you really do it?" An old man next to him couldn't help asking. "I'm not sure at the moment, but I can try." As Lin Sun said, he sat cross-legged on the ground, frowning and lost in thought. Everyone couldn't help feeling restless. How could he agree if he was not sure? Wasn't Instructor Lin really worried about the consequences of failure? Chu Shanha was ecstatic. As long as Lin Sun agreed and repaired it, he would definitely fail. As a spiritual tattoo master, Chu Shanha was also very clear about how serious the damage of the Sword of Apocalypse was, and it was almost impossible to repair it. Lin Sun agreed so rashly, which was tantamount to courting death. "Well, everyone, let's wait for 7 days. Instructor Lin is going to repair it, and we can't be disturbed by the outside world. Let's leave now and come back 7 days later." Chu Shanha said with a smile. It seemed that he was thinking about Lin Sun, but in fact, he was driving them away. He was worried that the teachers and students would talk too much and cause Lin's son to regret this. Everyone looked at each other and hesitated. But in the end, Shun Tuo sighed softly and took a look at Lin's son, who was sitting cross-legged in the distance. Without hesitation, he left with everyone. Chu Shanha walked at the end of the line. When he left, he also glanced at Lin's son in the distance, but his eyes were full of indifference and coldness. Soon, only Lin's son and the 4 spiritual tattoo masters were left in the hall on the 5th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower. Alas, young man, why are you doing this? There is no hope for the sword of apocalypse to be repaired. Once you try, it is bound to be destroyed. In that case, it will bring you a terrible disaster. Those spiritual tattoo masters sighed. However, Lin Sun looked calm and said quickly, "Seniors, please prepare some spiritual materials, spiritual ink, and inscribing pen for me in the next 7 days. Also, prepare some elixirs to restore physical strength." The 4 spiritual tattoo masters were all stunned. This little guy really planned to do this at great risk? Chapter 420. On the same day, the news that Lin Sun was going to repair the Sword of Apocalypse spread like wildfire. "It's too fierce, isn't it?" "It's not fierce at all. Teacher Lin must have been cheated. President Chu is really ruthless. Obviously, he intends to avenge Chu Haidong." "Hush, keep your voice down." In the spiritual tattoo yard, people were talking about it everywhere, whether in the school, the teachers' dormitories, or other corners. Everyone felt indignant for Lin Sun, but there was nothing they could do. Chu Shana's move was an open and above-board plot. Even if they knew that he was targeting Lin Sun, no one could say that Chu Shanha was wrong. Later, the news spread from the spiritual tattoo yard, and soon the Hidden Dragon Institute, martial arts yard, and strategies yard also began to spread the news about the repair of the Sword of Apocalypse. The reason why it received so much attention was that Lin Sun had long been famous in the Forbidden City. Since he came to Green Deer School, he had been known by many students and teachers. The second reason was that the origin of the Sword of Apocalypse was too amazing. It was the most precious treasure in the hands of the Empress, which had a great attraction. As for the third reason, it was related to the grudge between Lin Sun and the Chu clan. Everyone now knew that Chu Haidong had been suppressed by Lin Sun and became a huge laughingstock, affecting the reputation of the Chu clan. Under such circumstances, it was hard not to attract attention when Chu Shanha, the vice president of the spiritual tattoo yard, suddenly attacked Lin Sun with the plan to repair the Sword of Apocalypse. The Sword of Apocalypse is a legendary armor of spiritual tattoos. Lin Sun is really cheated this time. To be honest, I'm afraid that Lin Sun can't escape this time. After all, as far as I know, even senior spiritual tattooists from the headquarters of the Commune of Spiritual Tattooists, the Academy of Spiritual Implements of the Empire, and our spiritual tattoo yard can't repair the Sword of Apocalypse. No matter how great Lin Sun is, he has just become a spiritual tattooist. How can he do it? Yes, once Lin Sun fails to repair it, he is bound to destroy the Sword of Apocalypse. At that time, he will not only lose his reputation, but also suffer a terrible disaster from the imperial family. It's strange. Anyone can see that it is a trap. Why does Lin Sun insist on jumping in? Is he really not afraid of death? Let's wait and see. There will be results in 7 days. Discussions like this have become the hottest topic in Green Deer School today. The vast majority of people were not optimistic about Lin Sun. When it came to Chu Shana's strategy, they couldn't help but sigh with emotion. Old Ginger was spicier than young Ginger. Once Chu Shanha took action, Lin Sun would be doomed eternally. His means were too terrible. Puff! When Shiryu found out about this, he immediately spat out the wine in his mouth, causing his face to flush red, and he was in a rather sorry state. After a long time, Shiryu murmured, "What exactly is this kid thinking? F*CK. Why didn't I notice that Lin Sun is so arrogant before? But I like his temper more and more." Ning Ming sighed with emotion. Sword of Apocalypse. He has just become a spiritual tattoo master, and he dares to repair the armor with spiritual tattoos? This. In Qi family, Qi Tsangmei couldn't help but have a headache. Lin Sun always did something unexpected. Wasn't he afraid of anything? What do you think? On heart-cleansing peak, Lin Xiefeng was worried. Just wait for the news. Little Ka looked indifferent and didn't take it seriously. Well, let's continue to work. Vulture's reaction was calmer. He didn't express any opinion. He just told Lin Xiefeng to continue to deal with things on heart-cleansing peak. Lin Xiefeng couldn't help but smile bitterly. Why didn't they care about Lin Sun's life at all? Lin Zhong comforted Lin Xiefeng with a smile. Don't worry, everyone knows that young master will not do stupid things. In the Forbidden City, the news about Lin Sun repairing the Sword of Apocalypse was broadcasted on the spiritual screen. Countless cultivators around the spirit transmitting light screen were dumbfounded. They couldn't believe what they had just heard. Lin Sun had just entered Green Deer School for a month, and he made such a big noise again. He was really good at making trouble. But this time, he's probably going to be in grave danger. Westbrook Lin. When they heard the news, Lin Tianlong, Lin Yinshan, and Lin Pingdu couldn't help but be stunned. They originally thought that when Lin Sun entered Green Deer School, he would inevitably be attacked by the two top aristocratic families of Zhua and Qin. Whoever thought that the Chu family jumped out first before the Zhua and Qin families took action? Hey, this is what they call the evils they bring upon themselves. Look at how many people this little bastard offended after entering the Forbidden City. Qi family, Song family, Hua family, Chu family. Which one of them isn't a top aristocratic family with great power? Immediately, Lin Tianlong sneered. This is what it means to get revenge. This time, Lin Sun is doomed to not jump around for a long time. How can he repair the Sword of Apocalypse? Lin Yinshan and Lin Pingdu also echoed with a touch of pleasure on their faces. These days, the three families were suppressed miserably. In the end, they had to turn to the Zhua and Qin families for help. It could be seen how embarrassed they had been by Lin Sun. Now that they had finally heard such a piece of good news, it caused Lin Tianlong and the others to be unable to help but feel refreshed and elated. In a word, since Lin Sun entered the Forbidden City, he first beat the children of the Song family and the Hua family, then defeated Hua Wuyo, certified as a spiritual tattoo master, and caused the 9 dragons chant. Every once in a while, the news about him would make a big noise, and every time it seemed so unexpected and sensational, which made him the most eye-catching topic in the Forbidden City. Now, knowing that Lin Sun was going to repair the Sword of Apocalypse, many people couldn't help sighing with emotion. Was there anything in the world that Lin Sun dare not do? While the outside world was talking about it, the 5th floor of the summoning tower seemed to be isolated from the world and was not affected at all. Give me the Golden Gung Brilliant Spiritual Ink. Instructor Lin, what should I pay attention to when I use this spiritual ink here? Coordinate with the Golden Gung formation and resonate with the other 72 spiritual formations. Only in this way can the perfect fit be ensured when the 3rd crack is repaired. Be careful and pay attention to the other side. Don't touch the bud of the Demon Eye flower. Instructor Lin, does the Demon Eye flower also need to be smelted? No. The function of the Demon Eye flower is simple, but it's very important. Its bud is full of Xianming Yin Qi, which can be absorbed on the sword to produce a temporary freezing effect. In this way, the problem of the 7th crack being corroded can be solved. I see. By the way, Instructor Lin, what kind of writing technique are you using now? It seems that you are inscribing some kind of secret tattoo. Well, don't you know? This technique is called Cloudy Skyline, and it's most suitable for inscribing spirit formations that contain water, cloud, mist, and other attributes. The water jade tide spirit formation that I'm currently inscribing is to solve the problem of the 19th crack. The conversation between Lin Sun and the 4 spiritual tattoo masters echoed in the hall. But the scene at this time seemed a little weird. Lin Sun was sitting there with the Sword of Apocalypse and more than 10 kinds of spiritual inks in special cups and saucers on the table in front of him. In his right hand, Lin Sun was holding a light, golden, and slender inscribing pen. He was bending over the sword and sketching. Beside Lin Sun, the 4 senior spiritual tattoo masters were all sitting upright, staring at Lin Sun's movements attentively. Every time they had doubts, they would ask questions. When they got Lin Sun's answer, They would show a look of contemplation, joy, surprise, and understanding. It was like a group of students with a strong thirst for knowledge were being taught by a teacher. It was indescribably weird. The reason why it was weird was that these four were senior spiritual tattoo masters. They had been in charge of the 5th floor of the spiritual cultivation tower for many years. They were absolutely highly respected and had an extraordinary status. But now, in front of Lin Sun, they were like a group of students. The contrast was too big. If other instructors and students of the spiritual tattoo yard saw this, their jaws would drop. Who could imagine that Lin Sun, a teenager who had just been certified as a spiritual tattoo master, could do this? In fact, this was not Lin Sun's intention. When he was preparing to repair the Sword of Apocalypse, he was also opposed and questioned by these senior spiritual tattoo masters, and even pitted and sympathized with him. But when Lin Sun really started, this situation gradually changed. As the saying went, when an expert made a move, one would know whether he was good or not. These old men were all real senior spiritual tattoo masters. At once, they could see that Lin Sun's attainments in spiritual tattoos were mysterious and incredible. It caused their hearts to be repeatedly shaken. Some of the techniques and profundities were so profound that even they only understood a little. When Lin Sun solved their doubts and made them understand, they became more and more shocked, and they were subdued in their hearts unconsciously. Until now, it had become the scene in front of them. If Chu Shanha saw this scene, it was unknown how he would feel in his heart. Time went by, and soon 7 days passed. On this day, Chu Shanha got up early in the morning. He dressed himself neatly and combed his hair meticulously. Then he left his residence with a smile on his face. There was no need for him to call at all. When he arrived in front of the demon summoning tower, there were already dense figures gathered there. Most of them were instructors and students of the spiritual tattoo yard, and there were also many teachers and students from other yards of Green Deer School who came to watch the fun. The scene was quite spectacular, because everyone knew that today was the day Lin Sun promised to repair the Sword of Apocalypse. When seeing Chu Shanha's arrival, the crowd suddenly became restless, knowing that Lin Sun had come. In this regard, Chu Shanha did not pay too much attention to it. He summoned a servant to lead the way and strode to the 5th floor of the demon summoning tower with his head held high. Behind him, the crowd hurriedly followed him. What on earth did Lin Sun do in these 7 days? Could he repair the Sword of Apocalypse? Everyone was looking forward to it. Chapter 421. What's the situation? As he walked, Chu Shanha asked quickly. Dean, it's hard for him to escape. The attendant next to him whispered excitedly. Oh, to be specific. Chu Shanha's eyebrows also showed a touch of joy. For the first 3 days, he was constantly repairing the Apocalypse Sword. However, on the 4th day, he seemed to have suffered a setback, and he instantly became dispirited and listless. He sat on the ground and started to meditate, and he hasn't awoken from his meditation until today. The attendant said quickly, It's a pity that I can't enter the 5th floor of the Spirit Refining Tower, so I can only see this from the outside. Hearing this, Chu Shanha's breath became a little short, and he was excited. He took a deep breath, restrained his excitement, and said, Where is the Sword of Apocalypse? It's broken. The attendant smiled proudly. Broken? Even though Chu Shanha had already guessed this result, he was still shocked when he really knew the answer. Are you sure? Out of caution, Chu Shanha continued to confirm. I can guarantee with my head that the Sword of Apocalypse has been broken into 9 pieces and has been put there for 2 days without being repaired. The attendant swore solemnly. Good, good, good. Chu Shanha could no longer control his excitement and joy. It was finally done. When he saw Lin Sun later, he would see how depressed and frightened Lin Sun would be. Dean, shall we inform the imperial family immediately? The attendant asked. Chu Shanha was stunned, but he finally resisted the impulse and said, It's not too late to make a decision after seeing the specific situation. During the conversation, Chu Shanha had led a group of teachers and students to the 5th floor of the Demon Refining Tower. It was quiet in the huge hall. Chu Shanha's eyes lit up. As the attendant said, Lin Sun sat there cross-legged, motionless, as if he was meditating. Did this boy really give up on himself? She swept the surroundings with his gaze, and he noticed to his shock that the sword of revelation that had been shattered into 9 pieces was placed on a nearby table. All of them were laid out there, and they were suffused with violet chi. It was really broken. Chushana's eyes became brighter and brighter. Near the table, the 4 senior spiritual tattoo masters were studying something. They frowned and stared at the broken sword of apocalypse. They didn't know that Chushanha had arrived with a large group of teachers and students. This, the apocalypse sword shattered? Does this mean that Instructor Kobayashi's restoration operation has really failed? Heavens! How could this be? With the sword of apocalypse destroyed, how could the current imperial family let Instructor Kobayashi off? How could the current empress tolerate her own treasure being destroyed? He's finished. Instructor Shaolin. He's really in big trouble this time. Soon, the teachers and students cried out in alarm, and their expressions changed drastically. Standing in the crowd, Shun Tua couldn't help showing a surprised look. He had thought that since Lin Sun dared to accept this task, he might be able to create a miracle. But in reality, isn't this too cruel? The expressions of the students of Class 9 were even more gloomy, and their hearts were extremely heavy. Instructor Shaolin, whom they respected, had fallen into a predicament because of a trap. This was something they could not accept. Everyone, victory and defeat are commonplace in a war. There's no need to be so surprised. Chu Shanha coughed dryly and said in a deep voice, "It's just that it's a pity that I didn't get to see Instructor Lin's elegant demeanor." Many people were angry. Even some teachers and students who had nothing to do with this matter felt that Chu Shanha's move was too much. This action to restore the Sword of Apocalypse was originally carefully planned by Chu Shanha. Now he made sarcastic remarks, which seemed to be full of revenge. "President Chu, the Sword of Apocalypse has been seriously damaged, and there is little hope for it to be restored. It's only a matter of time before it is destroyed." Shun Tua said in a deep voice, "This can't be blamed on Lin's son. Yes, so many spiritual tattoo masters in the Forbidden City are at a loss. It's reasonable for Instructor Lin to fail." Other teachers and students echoed. Chu Shanha never expected that there would be someone who disagreed with him at this time. His face darkened, and he said, "Why didn't Instructor Lin refuse earlier if he knew it was impossible? Since he agreed to it, then he needs to take responsibility for this failure alone." After a pause, he sighed with emotion. "Alas, in fact, I can't bear to see Instructor Lin fail, but the Sword of Apocalypse is too important. Now it's destroyed, the consequences are too serious." Seeing Chu Shanha's hypocritical appearance at this time, many people couldn't help but be angry and scolded him in their hearts. It was obvious that the old guy intended to kill Lin Sun at one stroke, leaving no chance for Lin Sun to survive. President Chu, Shen Tua still wanted to say something, but he was interrupted by Chu Shanha with a wave of his hand. "Well, there's no need to say anything more. It has already happened, and it's useless to find excuses. The only thing we can do now is to report this matter to the royal family as soon as possible in order to obtain the greatest understanding." How cruel! Everyone was shocked. If this was known by the royal family, there would be no room for maneuver. "Come on." Before everyone could respond, Chu Shanha had given an order: "Go to the royal family of the Empire and report the failure of Instructor Lin to restore the Sword of Apocalypse," which eventually led to the destruction of the Sword of Apocalypse. Yes, a servant immediately came out and took the order. Everyone's heart suddenly turned cold. Chu Shanha smiled slightly, restrained the excitement in his heart, and sighed deeply. "You don't have to feel sad for Instructor Lin. I believe the royal family of the Empire will definitely give an appropriate result." At this moment, although Chu Shanha didn't show anything on the surface, everyone could feel that he must be complacent and high-spirited at this moment. "Who said I was defeated?" At this moment, Lin Sun, who had been sitting cross-legged, suddenly got up and looked at them. Only 7 days had passed, but Lin Sun's face had lost a lot of weight. His beard was unshaven, and there was still a trace of fatigue between his eyebrows. Obviously, the action of restoring the Sword of Apocalypse these days had also consumed a lot of effort and energy. Everyone couldn't bear to look at Lin Sun. They thought that Lin Sun spoke at this time because he couldn't accept the result of failure. Instructor Lin, the destruction of the Sword of Apocalypse is really not something that everyone wants to see. I hope you don't be too sad. Chu Shanha pretended to be sympathetic and sighed. Lin Sun smiled. Thank you for your concern, President Chu, but let me ask you, which eye of yours saw that I failed? These words were very impolite, and there was a faint hint of anger. Instructor Lin, I know you're in a bad mood, but I hope you can pay attention to your words and don't talk nonsense again. Chu Shanha's face darkened, and he said unhappily, Pay attention to my words? That's okay. Lin Sun chuckled. President Chu, do you remember Chu Haidong? I feel that you and he are from the same family. What did this mean? Many people were stunned, and some people understood in an instant with a strange look. Chu Haidong was the guy who was proved to be a fool by Lin Sun. Now, Lin Sun's words obviously also classified Chu Shanha as a fool. These words were too vicious, but thinking about it carefully, it was inevitable that Chu Shanha would be angry and resentful to Lin Sun. It seemed reasonable for Chu Shanha to satirize Chu Shanha. Chu Shanha obviously understood, and his face immediately became gloomy. With cold lights surging in his eyes, he stared at Lin Sun coldly. Instructor Lin, what do you mean? The atmosphere suddenly became tense. Lin Sun was unmoved and said with a smile, What do I mean? President Chu must be very clear in your mind. But you really wronged me just now. The Sword of Apocalypse has been successfully repaired by me 3 days ago. How can it be a failure? All the people present were stunned. Those teachers and students looked at the broken Sword of Apocalypse on the table in the distance, and their faces were full of doubts. Chu Shanha couldn't help but laugh out loud. He shook his head and said, Instructor Lin, I think your mind is in a mess. You're just spouting nonsense. The Apocalypse sword was clearly shattered to such a state. How can this be called being repaired? At the end of his words, he couldn't help laughing again. He was so pleased that he could beat Lin Sun to the point of talking nonsense. President Chu, you'd better stop laughing. At this time, the 4 senior masters of spiritual tattoos also came over and couldn't help reminding Lin Sun in a low voice with a touch of pity on their faces. Yes, it was pity, not for Lin Sun, but for Chu Shanha. This surprised everyone, and they faintly sensed that something unexpected was about to occur. But Chu Shanha frowned and said coldly, What do you mean? Did I do something wrong just now? Before he finished speaking, his voice stopped abruptly. His pupils suddenly dilated, and his whole body seemed to be struck by lightning, standing there in a daze. Lin Sun stretched out his hand and grasped. Suddenly, clusters of purple light emerged on the table not far away, which were the 9 pieces of the Sword of Apocalypse. These 9 pieces seemed to have intelligence at this moment. With a unique and rhythmic clanging sound, magnificent and holy Ziyao flowers bloomed one after another. The 9 Ziyao flowers swayed in the air, emitting dazzling and blazing brilliance. In an instant, they turned into a 3-foot-long spiritual sword, emitting an ancient, majestic, and sacred aura. It was floating in the air, and the purple mist on the sword body was steaming. The pressure made the void collapse inch by inch, and the air turned into a turbulent flow, making a whining sound. Many teachers and students exclaimed. They only felt a stabbing pain in their eyes, and their hearts palpitated. They didn't dare to look at the light of the sword body. Some students even felt terrified in their hearts, and they felt a chill run down their spines. Their souls were terrified, and their faces turned pale. The Sword of Apocalypse was restored to its original state in an instant. Moreover, the aura it released was completely different from that of 7 days ago. It became holier, more majestic, and more terrible. It seemed that it suddenly glowed with a new soul and life. In the shock of the audience, Lin Sun looked at Chu Shanha in the distance with a smile and said, President Chu, your current expression is exactly the same as that of Chu Haidong in the headquarters of the commune of spiritual tattooists. You are really from the same clan. Chapter 422. In the silence, Lin Sun's voice was not loud, but it resounded clearly in everyone's ears, making them feel shocked, and a strange emotion welled up in their hearts. Lin Sun's counterattack was too fast. Just now, he was regarded as a loser and was in a worrying situation, suffering from Chu Shana's frequent humiliation and blows. But in a twinkling of an eye, when the sword of apocalypse, which had been broken into 9 pieces, appeared intact, it was like an invisible slap on Chu Shana's face. It was a solid slap, and Lin Sun's words showed that he regarded Chu Shana as a fool like Chu Haidong again. Chu Shana's face changed, and his eyes were full of anger and disbelief. You this? How could it be possible? Yes, he didn't expect that the sword of apocalypse, which had been broken into 9 pieces, could be restored in an instant. It was incredible. Lin Sun, has the sword of apocalypse really been repaired? Shen Tuo couldn't help asking. He was so shocked that the sword of apocalypse was seriously damaged, which made all the masters of spiritual tattoos in the Forbidden City helpless. But Lin Sun only took a few days to solve the problem. How could Shen Tuo not be shocked? Not only Shen Tuo, but also other teachers and students present were shocked. It's indeed repaired. We saw it with our own eyes. Beside Lin Sun, an old man said with a look full of emotion. Yes, not only the internal damage of the sword has been completely repaired, but also the 49 spiritual formations contained in the Sword of Apocalypse have been refined and rearranged. Compared with the past, the power of the Sword of Apocalypse is more powerful. The most incredible thing is that it only took Instructor Lin 4 days to do this. Compared with him, we are also ashamed of our inferiority. The other 3 also sighed, and their words were filled with amazement. Everyone present looked at each other, and their hearts were filled with an unprecedented shock. It was true. It only took Lin Sun 4 days to repair a piece of armor with spiritual tattoos in the hands of the current empress. And he was only 16 years old this year, and it had only been more than a month since he was certified as a spiritual tattooist last time. It was too amazing. Everyone was shocked and fell into a deathly silence. The more they thought about it, the more shocked they felt. On the other hand, Chu Shana's expression was indeterminate while the veins on his forehead bulged out. His entire body was stiff on the spot, and he seemed to be on the verge of coughing up blood with aggrievement, frustration, and shock. Obviously, he was still unable to accept all of this. He had calculated every step and even began to arrange how many ways to strike Lin Sun when Lin Sun failed. But he didn't expect that Lin Sun could really repair Apocalypse Sword in just a few days. How is this possible? Chu Shana clearly remembered that the Apocalypse Sword was so badly damaged that even a grandmaster of spiritual tattoos found it tricky. Because of this, he dared to believe that Lin Sun, who had just been certified as a spiritual tattoo master, could never succeed. But in reality, it was like a blade that fiercely slashed through all of Chu Shana's plans, and then it stabbed fiercely into his heart, causing him to be aggrieved to the point of being unable to catch his breath. Many people were keenly aware that Chu Shana's face was getting more and more gloomy and ugly. It was obvious that he was about to go mad with anger. This made many people feel a touch of pleasure in their hearts. Chu Shana repeatedly humiliated and made fun of Lin Sun before. Although he used an above-board scheme, his means were too cruel and cold, which made many people uncomfortable. But now, Chu Shana had dug a pit for himself. This result was simply too satisfying. Especially those students of Class C9, they looked at Chu Shana with undisguised disdain, pity, and joy. This old guy wanted to frame Instructor Lin Sun, but now he lifted a stone and dropped it on his own feet. This was the so-called karma of heaven. And some discerning people could see that after this incident, Lin Sun's prestige would rise to a new height. After all, the origin of Apocalypse Sword was too amazing. It was the most precious treasure in the hands of the Empress and a legendary armor with spiritual tattoos. However, Lin Sun could repair this treasure in just a few days with his own ability. This method was simply amazing and unpredictable. It could be imagined what a great sensation and response it would cause in the world when the news spread out. And Lin Sun's reputation would also rise to a new peak. On the other hand, Chu Shana's plan was cruel and cold, but in the end, he was trapped by the pit he dug himself. Although he was unscathed, after this incident, his reputation and prestige were bound to be affected, and he would become a controversial existence in the Forbidden City. This kind of experience was no different from that of his nephew, Chu Haidong. It was no wonder that Lin Sun satirized Chu Shanha and Chu Haidong as if they were carved from the same mold. After taking a few deep breaths in the dark, Chu Shanha obviously controlled his emotions and said with a forced smile, "Instructor Lin's means are so brilliant that it really broadens my horizons. I believe that all of you here have the same idea as me. I still have some important things to deal with, so I won't stay here any longer." With that, he was about to leave. He had no choice. Today, he was humiliated by Lin Sun in an incredible way under the watchful eyes of the public, which made Chu Shanha so ashamed and angry that he wanted to die. How could he stay here any longer? Wait a minute. Dean Chu seems to have forgotten one thing. Lin Sun suddenly said. Chu Shanha's heart sank. He suppressed his inner irritation and asked slowly, "What's the matter?" Since the current emperor and empress handed over the apocalypse sword to the spiritual tattoo yard to repair, she must have promised a lot of generous rewards. Now that I have successfully repaired the apocalypse sword, shouldn't the rewards be settled with me? Lin Sun asked with a smile. As soon as these words came out, all the people present were speechless. But what Lin Sun said was true. Who dared to repair the apocalypse sword without a generous reward? Chu Shanha's lips twitched fiercely, and he said with a stiff smile, "Well, when the apocalypse sword is returned to the royal family, there will be generous rewards." Lin Sun smiled, "That's good." However, when Chu Shanha was about to leave again, Lin Sun suddenly said again, "Dean Chu, there's one more thing. F***CK, your grandpa. Are you done or not?" Chu Shanha was so angry that he almost couldn't control his temper. He felt that Lin Sun was humiliating and torturing him again and again at this moment. "Say it." Chu Shanha gritted his teeth and spat out a word softly from his mouth. "I remember that you sent someone to the royal family just now and said that the apocalypse sword was destroyed by me. If the situation on the royal family's side is the opposite," before Lin Sun finished his words, Chu Shanha trembled all over and his face couldn't help changing suddenly. He realized the seriousness of the problem before Lin Sun finished his words. This was a fucking crime of deceiving the emperor. Once the empress knew that he had done something, the consequences would be unimaginable. At this moment, other teachers and students present couldn't help but gasp. They vaguely guessed that all this was done by Lin Sun on purpose. If Lin Sun had warned them earlier and announced the result of repairing the apocalypse sword, how could such a thing have happened? His means of revenge were really cruel. However, if Chu Shanha hadn't deliberately hit Lin Sun with such a vicious trick, Lin Sun wouldn't have been able to take advantage of it. All of a sudden, Chu Shanha's face became extremely livid. He could no longer control his anger. He pointed at Lin Sun and roared, "Lin Sun, why didn't you remind me just now? Why do you want to embarrass me now?" Lin Sun rolled his eyes. "Dean Chu, it's so difficult to repair the apocalypse sword, but I didn't see you remind me. You!" Chu Shanha was so angry that his eyes almost popped out. He felt something sweet in his throat and almost coughed up blood. He had planned for so long, but he never thought that he would be cheated by Lin Sun. This made him almost unable to control himself. "What's wrong with me? Which part of it displeases you, Headmaster Chu?" Lin Sun showed a puzzled look. "Besides, I've repaired the Sword of Apocalypse for our school, which is a great contribution. As a vice president, you should be happy for me. Why are you so angry? Did I scold you like I scolded Chu Haidong, stupid?" Hearing the word stupid, Chu Shanha couldn't help roaring, "Boy, don't go too far." His face was full of anger, and his expression was a little ferocious, which made all the teachers and students present change their faces slightly. "I'm going too far? Dean Chu, you should know better who's going too far." Lin Sun smiled indifferently. "You don't have to use your identity to suppress me. You should know that Green Deer School invited me to come here. If you really annoy me, I can just leave. As soon as these words came out, Shun Tuo and other teachers were shocked. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would be so desperate once he fought back. If Lin Sun was really forced to leave, the loss would be immeasurable. After all, Lin Sun was not only the most outstanding young spiritual tattoo master of the younger generation, but also could repair armors with spiritual tattoos. Even a group of senior spiritual tattoo masters could not repair the sword of Apocalypse Sword, which could be repaired by Lin Sun in just a few days. How many such talents could be found? Therefore, when Lin Sun said such cruel words, those teachers couldn't keep calm and complain in their hearts that Chu Shanha had gone too far. If Lin Sun was forced to leave, their school of spiritual tattoo would become a laughing stock in the Forbidden City. Boy, you are really cruel. Keenly aware of the change in the atmosphere, Chu Shanha was so aggrieved that his lungs were about to explode. He gritted his teeth and glared at Lin Sun, then turned around and left. Obviously, in the face of Lin Sun's threat, he didn't dare to be too decisive. He could only avoid the sharp edge and choose to retreat. This was undoubtedly equivalent to bowing his head. Seeing that Chu Shanha, a vice dean with real power, was humiliated by Lin Sun and left in embarrassment, everyone sighed with emotion in their hearts. Who could imagine that a strike against Lin Sun would have such an amazing change in the end? P.S. Thanks to Shija Z and Shufriend 3052 for their gifts. The third chapter is here. After midnight. Those who can't wait will see it tomorrow. Chapter 423. With the departure of Chu Shanha, the storm against Lin Sun came to an end. Before long, Lin Sun, surrounded by the students of Class 9C, left the 5th floor of the monster summoning tower under the gaze of a crowd of complicated people. Returning to the teacher's dormitory, Lin Sun went back to his room alone and fell asleep on the bed. Outsiders only saw that he disrupted Chu Shanha's plot in an extremely beautiful way, but only Lin Sun himself knew how much effort and energy he had put in these 7 days. This was the first time he tried to repair a piece of armor with spiritual tattoos, and once there was a slight mistake, the treasure would be destroyed. It could be imagined how difficult it was for Lin Sun to repair it again. It could be said that in the first 4 days, he had no rest at all. He had been racking his brains and trying every way to repair it. Finally, he succeeded, but the price he paid was that he was so tired that he didn't want to move anymore. He just wanted to sleep. While Lin Sun was sleeping, the movement about the repair of Sword of Apocalypse spread quickly and caused a great disturbance in Green Deer School. Until the night, the news was like a storm that began to spread in the Forbidden City, causing a great sensation and uproar. Lin Sun is really going against the natural order. Many people didn't expect that Lin Sun would do such a sensational thing after being certified as a spiritual tattooist for more than a month. That was the most precious treasure in the hands of the Empress, which had baffled many senior spiritual tattooists. But in the end, it was perfectly solved by Lin Sun, a young spiritual tattooist. It was incredible in itself. Therefore, on this night, Lin Sun's name once again spread like a plague in every place of the Forbidden City, causing all kinds of discussions. There was no doubt that Lin Sun once again proved his foundation and strength with his actions. Through this matter, his personal reputation and honor climbed to a new height. The master of heart-cleansing peak, the martial arts genius who defeated Hua Wuyo, the 16-year-old young spiritual tattooist who caused the 9 Dragons chant, the first-class teacher of Green Deer School who repaired Sword of Apocalypse, Lin Sun had been shrouded in dazzling halos one after another. Behind each glory, there was a sensation, and it was less than a year since Lin Sun entered the Forbidden City. Amateurs enjoy the show, while experts appreciate the artistry. For some bigwigs, Lin's action of repairing the Apocalypse Sword was too special and unusual. That was the armor with spiritual tattoos. It was a treasure that belonged to the current Empress. All this brought Lin not only honor, but also a kind of potential that everyone had to pay attention to. Now that Lin Sun could repair the armor with spiritual tattoos, would it be far from him to refine a set of armor with spiritual tattoos by himself? Think about it. If one day Lin Sun could achieve this at such a young age, how much sensation and attention would it cause? Who would dare to easily offend such a genius? It was definitely not a fun thing to offend a spiritual tattoo master who could refine armor with spiritual tattoos. Most importantly, what Lin Sun restored this time was the most precious treasure in the hands of the current empress. In this way, how could the current empress not notice the existence of such a young talent like Lin Sun? With this layer of relationship, Lin Sun imperceptibly had another identity that people feared. Lin Sun not only has amazing potential, but also has incredible luck. After this incident, it can be said that he has turned misfortune into fortune, and on the contrary, he has gained an unexpected great harvest. Many people couldn't help sighing with emotion. Chu Shana has lost all his face this time. After this incident, he will not only be disgraced, but I'm afraid that he will also be accused of being jealous of those who are more capable than him. It's true that Chu Shanha, the deputy dean of Spiritual Tattoo Yard, was defeated by a young man. It's really sad. As long as Lin Sun is in Spiritual Tattoo Yard in the future, I'm afraid that Chu Shanha will never be able to raise his head again. His situation will be a little embarrassing and distressed. When talking about Chu Shanha, most people's views were surprisingly similar. That was, Chu Shanha's action not only failed to deal with Lin Sun, but also caused a big trouble for himself. It would be very difficult for him to raise his head again in the future. The funniest ones were Lin Tianlong, Lin Nianshan, and Lin Pingdu. When they heard the news, they all looked as if their parents had died. The blow was really too heavy. Originally, the strong rise of Lin Sun had already made the three collateral forces fall into a turbulent situation. They were even forced to ask the Zhua clan and the Qin clan for help to deal with Lin Sun. Who would have thought that Lin Sun suddenly made Chu Shanha, a big shot, lose his face in the Forbidden City before he took any action? Lin Sun, on the other hand, suddenly rose to a new height with his means of repairing the Sword of Apocalypse and won praise from all over the city. And it was very likely that he would get rewards from the current royal family and the favor of the current emperor and empress. The more dazzling and excellent Lin Sun's performance was, the heavier the blow to the three collateral forces and the worse the impact would be. In this way, Lin Sun might show his fangs and attack the collateral forces at any time. Let's wait and see. The forces of the Zhua clan and the Qin clan haven't taken action yet. I'll let you jump around for a while. This was the idea of Lin Tianlong, Lin Nianshan, and Lin Pingdu. They pinned all their hopes on the Zhua clan and Qin clan. Practitioner, the fourth pass of the Heaven Accessing Place is called Domain Conquest. You need to reach Sea Spirit Realm next time. Before Lin Sun woke up from a deep sleep, the cold and empty voice seemed to ring in his ears again in a trance. Opening his eyes, Lin Sun took a deep breath. A thoughtful expression flashed through his deep black eyes. In the end, he still resisted the impulse and decided not to break the pass in the near future. Although he had reached the consummation of the middle stage of Sea Spirit Realm and was only a step away from the late stage of Sea Spirit Realm, he was qualified to enter the Heaven Accessing Place to break the pass. Unfortunately, Lin Sun had no energy and time to break the pass now. He needed to teach, practice martial arts, study spiritual tattoos, pay attention to everything on Heart Cleansing Peak, and be alert to the attacks from the Zhua clan and the Qin clan. Under such circumstances, how could Lin Sun still have the mood to break the pass? What's more, in Lin Sun's view, since the fourth pass of Green Cloud Path of the Heaven Accessing Place was called Domain Conquest, it was by no means simple. If he could, Lin Sun would rather choose to break the pass when he reached the late stage of Sea Spirit Realm. In that case, the chance of passing the pass would be much greater. Getting up and stretching his body, Lin Sun walked straight out of the room. Soon, he learned from Shun Tua that he had been sleeping for 2 days. During these 2 days, the matter of him repairing the Apocalypse sword also caused a great uproar in the Forbidden City. Under such circumstances, Chu Shanha, the vice dean, chose to retreat temporarily. He returned to Chu clan for closed-door training and disappeared from Spiritual Tattoo Yard. Obviously, Chu Shanha's decision was very wise. If he stayed in Spiritual Tattoo Yard, He would be embarrassed by the comments he suffered. Under such circumstances, he chose to retreat temporarily. When the disturbance subsided, he might have a chance to make a comeback in the future. For this, Lin Sun felt much relaxed. At the same time, Shen Tuo told Lin Sun that Dean Tang Qian had ordered Lin Sun to stay in spiritual tattoo yard at ease and receive special care. In the end, Shen Tuo talked about the Sword of Apocalypse. After the treasure was returned to the royal family of the empire, Lin Sun was appreciated a lot. Lin Sun asked directly, "Is there any reward or reward?" Shen Tuo didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He took out a jade invitation with a ziyao flower and said, "This is the invitation to the 300th birthday party of the Empress. I made an exception to give it to you." Lin Sun was stunned. Is this the reward? In his opinion, it was just a birthday party. The reward was too perfunctory. Seeing this, Shen Tuo almost couldn't help but roll his eyes. He had to explain patiently, "Lin Sun, do you know how many big shots can't get such an invitation? This is a great honor. Anyone who is able to attend this birthday banquet is at least a monstrous figure whose name shakes the heavens." Lin Sun was stunned and still felt bored. No matter how great the big shots who attended the birthday party were, what did it have to do with him? What can I say about you? As long as you attend the birthday party, how can you not be favored and rewarded by the Empress because you repaired the Sword of Apocalypse? Shen Tuo stopped being euphemistic and told Lin Sun some real benefits of attending the birthday party directly. As expected, Lin Sun smiled with satisfaction and said, "That's good. I didn't work in vain." Shen Tuo couldn't help but smile bitterly. Lin Sun was really strange. Others couldn't get the chance to attend the birthday party of the Empress, but Lin Sun didn't care about it. On the contrary, when he talked about some benefits, Lin Sun was tempted and attached importance to it. There was still half a month before the 300th birthday party of the Empress. Lin Sun didn't care too much about it. As usual, he practiced martial arts in addition to teaching every day. Perhaps the only change was that every time he gave a lecture, the hall that was specially approved by Dean Tang Qian would become more and more popular, and it would always be filled to the brim. Not only students from other classes, but also some teachers and senior masters of spiritual tattoos from Spiritual Tattoo Yard came to attend the class. The scene could be described as a sea of people. All this was probably due to Lin Sun's successful repair of the Sword of Apocalypse. For spiritual tattooists, Lin Sun's current attainments in spiritual tattoos were enough to convince many masters of spiritual tattoos. As time went on, the news about the 300th birthday party of the Empress began to attract the attention of the whole Forbidden City. Because this birthday party was different from the previous years. It was unprecedentedly grand. Chapter 424. A few days passed, and the birthday of the Emperor and Empress arrived. Lin Sun arrived at the inner city by carriage. Then he told Zhu Laosan to leave and entered the inner city alone with the invitation. The inner city belonged to the imperial family. Without an invitation, it was difficult for other big shots to enter, not to mention Lin Sun. Walking into the inner city was like walking into another world. As far as the eye could see, there were towering and magnificent ancient buildings, overflowing with sacred brilliance in the morning glow. When one stood within it, it made one feel tiny, and the reason was that the building was truly too grand and incomparably majestic. The location of the imperial palace was easy to find. It was located in the center of the central axis of the inner city. At a glance, one could see a white jade avenue dozens of meters wide, leading straight to the gate of the imperial palace. On both sides of the white jade avenue, there were heavily guarded imperial guards, all armed with weapons and looking solemn and mighty. When Lin Sun arrived, many guests had already arrived. All of them were nobles, and there was no lack of great cultivators with monstrous auras, which made Lin Sun secretly shocked. There is no doubt that today's birthday banquet was bound to be very lively. Lin Sun walked alone. It was his first time to come to the inner city. Looking around, the sky was shrouded in purple chi, and the surrounding ancient buildings gave off an indescribable sense of majesty. Xiao Empire was so vast, and the Forbidden City was so prosperous. As the heart of the Forbidden City, the inner city was naturally extraordinary. Along the way, Lin Sun was recognized by many people. They looked at him with different expressions and disgust in secret. Undoubtedly, Lin Sun had become a celebrity in the Forbidden City. Whether it was defeating Hua Wuyo, being certified as a spiritual tattoo master, or repairing the Sword of Apocalypse for the Emperor and Empress recently, he had caused a stir in the Forbidden City and attracted attention from all sides. Therefore, it was normal for him to be recognized while walking in the inner city. Before long, Lin Sun saw a familiar figure. It was Bai Lingshi. She was also alone, dressed in a light cyan dress. Her black hair fell to her waist like a waterfall. Her graceful and slender figure looked holy and transcendent in the morning light. Just by looking at her back, Lin Sun could feel her otherworldly beauty. It turned out that she was also here. After thinking for a while, Lin Sun wondered whether he should greet Bai Lingshi. After all, Bai Lingshi had stood up for him more than once in Smiles of Beauties. Although Bai Lingshi didn't care about it, Lin Sun had to be grateful. To Lin's surprise, Bai Lingshi stopped in front of him as if she had sensed something. She suddenly turned around and saw Lin with her clear, starry eyes. Obviously, she didn't expect to see Lin here. She couldn't help but feel a little surprised. Then she walked over and said, "You're here too?" Lin Sun smiled and nodded. "What a coincidence. Let's go together." Bai Lingshi said casually and walked side by side with Lin. She had a beautiful appearance, a picturesque appearance, a graceful figure, skin that was pure, white like fine jade, and an indifferent and leisurely bearing, causing her to seem like a celestial maiden that had walked out from a painting. Even though Lin Sun had met her once not long ago, he still couldn't help feeling amazed. This girl with the talent of starshine eternal had become more beautiful and transcendent than before. 2 years ago in the Bloodthirsty camp, I thought the quality of the pond of spiritual power I condensed should be better than yours. But now I find that the pond of spiritual power you condensed at that time should not be as simple as the first grade one. Bai Lingshi suddenly talked about the past. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and said with a smile, "It doesn't make any difference." Bai Lingshi's starry eyes seemed illusory. She glanced at Lin Sun and said, "There is a difference. At least with the first grade pond of spiritual power, it is impossible for you to reach the consummation of the middle stage of Sea Spirit Realm in less than 2 years." After a pause, a trace of surprise appeared between her eyebrows, and she said, "What's more, a few months ago, you defeated Hua Wuyo in the middle stage of Sea Spirit Realm with only the cultivation of the initial stage of Sea Spirit Realm. Not everyone could do that. I know Hua Wuyo's strength. She's also a first-class figure in the martial arts courtyard of Green Deer School. Her fighting capacity is enough to rank on the Sea Spirit Gold list. Under such circumstances, you can still defeat her. This is no longer a matter of foundation." When she spoke up to hear, she raised her clear eyes and stared at the side of Lin Sun's face, and then her moist cherry lips parted slightly as she said, "If I'm not wrong, your innate attributes didn't seem to vanish after the spiritual vein in your body was dug out." Lin Sun was shocked. He didn't expect that Bai Lingshi could almost see through his biggest secret just by analyzing. "You don't have to answer me. It's just my speculation." Bai Lingshi moved her eyes and looked at the towering palace in the distance. She said softly, "A few days ago, I learned something. Do you believe that there's a more vast and mysterious place outside Xiao Empire, where there are ancient orthodoxies, fairyland-like blessed lands, and unimaginable cultivation resources?" Lin Sun was shocked. Inexplicably, he thought of the bloody killing more than 10 years ago in Yun Qingbai, who killed his parents and clansmen. According to the old man of Heiyao Shrine, Yun Qingbai came from a mysterious orthodoxy called Heaven-Reaching Sword Sect. The old man, the clan, said that only by going there can one find the real way of Tao, transcend mortals and become saints, and live as long as heaven. However, not everyone is qualified to go there. Bai Lingshi murmured. Her pretty, flawless face carried a sense of longing from the bottom of her heart. Lin Sun was in a strange mood. He could roughly judge that the mysterious domain mentioned by Bai Lingshi must be the place where Yun Qingbai came from. It won't be long before I set off to explore this way. Bai Lingshi took a deep breath. Although her voice was indifferent, there was an unquestionable firmness in it. Looking at the girl in a green dress who was bathed in the morning light and overflowing with an illusory and holy aura, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel admiration in his heart. He smiled and said, "Then I wish you a smooth journey in advance and achieve your wish." He'd already discerned that Bai Lingshi possessed an extraordinary firmness towards cultivation and the path towards the Tao, and that was why she seemed so extraordinary and extraordinary in the mortal world. Bai Lingshi smiled. The inadvertent smile seemed to be able to make the world dim. It was indescribably beautiful and dazzling. Let's not talk about this. At this birthday party, there are many talents who have been dominating in the early years. Do you know why they are here? Bai Lingshi suddenly asked. Are they here for more than birthday congratulations? Lin Sun was stunned. Bai Lingshi shook her head. This birthday party is different from the past. It's said that there will be several experts in the mysterious realm beyond Xiao Empire. If you can win their favor, you may have a meteoric rise and go with them to cultivate in that mysterious realm. Lin Sun realized why Bai Lingshi told him those things before. It turned out that she also came for this. Lin Sun even guessed that Bai Lingshi mistakenly thought that he came to the birthday party to fight for this opportunity. Lin Sun was about to say something when suddenly a roar sounded behind him. The noise was so great that it attracted many people's attention. This was the most sacred place in the inner city, with a white jade avenue led directly to the imperial palace. Who dared to be so arrogant and make such a big noise? Turning around, Lin Sun saw a magnificent chariot pulled by 4 Dolku flood beasts galloping towards him at high speed. The chariot was colorful and decorated with purple cloud patterns. The 4 Dolku flood beasts were even more terrible. Each of them was ferocious and fierce. It dared to gallop on the white jade avenue without anyone daring stop it. This showed how prominent the identity of the owner of the chariot was. Black Flood Dragon Chariot. Ling Tianho is back. 5 years ago, Ling Tianho left the Forbidden City with the cultivation of Astral Spirit Realm. He killed his way into the turbulent wasteland and killed countless foreign bastards. He made a name for himself, but I didn't think that he would return to the Forbidden City 5 years later. After 5 years, I wonder how powerful Ling Tianho has become. At least, he should be at the complete Spirit Sea realm. Many people on the White Jade Avenue were alarmed and recognized the identity of the newcomer. It was a famous young marquis in the imperial family, Ling Tianho Zhao Jingyin. This was a domineering, arrogant, and fierce person. The most terrifying thing was that his cultivation talent was also extremely strong. 5 years ago, Ling Tianho Zhao Jingyin was only 14 years old. His personality was stubborn and surly. Just because they were fighting over a female cultivator in a brothel, he killed more than 10 cultivators. Not only did he take the female cultivator by force, but he also burned down the brothel. This caused a great shock in the Forbidden City. In the end, it even caught the attention of the current emperor. He ordered Ling Tianho to be banished from the Forbidden City and sent to the border of the empire to atone for his crimes. No one expected Ling Tianho Zhao Jingyin to return to the Forbidden City in just 5 years. Just listening to the discussion around him, Lin Sun immediately understood that the reason this chariot dared to gallop on the White Jade Avenue was because its owner had a high status and was fearless. The guy actually came back. Bai Lingxi slightly frowned, and there was a hint of disgust in her eyes. It was obvious that she had heard of Ling Tianho's past misdeeds. Harumph. What Lin Sun never expected was that when the dark WIRM treasured carriage passed by him, it suddenly stopped abruptly. Due to the momentum of stopping being too fierce, the savage WIRM that pulled the treasured carriage abruptly straightened its enormous body, and its 2 front legs that were thick like iron pillars directly smashed towards Lin Sun. Cries of alarm came from the nearby area. This happened too suddenly. For an ordinary cultivator, it was too late to dodge. To be honest, Lin Sun was indeed a little unprepared. But the experience he had gained from many years of fighting made him subconsciously dodge to one side with marvelous steps. Chapter 425. The black flood dragon beast's hooves stepped on the air, its ferocious might terrifying. Such a ferocious beast could frighten sea spirit realm cultivators. Once its hooves hit Lin Sun, he would be seriously injured even if he didn't die. Whoosh! Suddenly, the shadow of Ice Dragon rushed out from behind Lin Sun, and clouds and mist appeared under his feet. In a flash, his figure had disappeared. Tribulation Dragon 9 Transformations Stage 1 Dragon Ice Steps. With a loud bang, the black WRM beast's hooves missed and smashed onto the ground, creating a loud bang. Even the earth seemed to tremble for a moment, and it could be seen how terrifying the strength of this strike was. Seeing this, Lin Sun breathed a sigh of relief, but he couldn't help feeling annoyed. The beasts pulling the chariot had been tamed for a long time. If there was no order, how could they dare to be so rampant? Roar! But before Lin Sun could flare up, the black flood dragon beast actually became even more furious and savage after its strike missed, and it let out an enraged roar as a fishy stench assaulted Lin Sun's face, and it opened its mouth to bite towards Lin Sun. Scram! Lin Sun's black eyes were cold, and his whole body was covered with ice mist. He took a step forward, and an ice dragon shadow rushed out. It raised its head to the sky and roared like a dragon. An indescribable, horrible momentum suddenly burst out from Lin Sun and swept out. In the blink of an eye, the dark WRM beast that bit over emitted a wail, and with a thump, its enormous body seemed as if it was pressed down by a mountain, causing it to crawl on the ground and shiver. At the same time, the other 3 dark WRM beasts that pulled the treasured carriage emitted sorrowful cries in unison as they fell weakly to the ground. Hiss! A wave of gasps resounded in the surroundings. At this time, Lin Sun's figure was shrouded in ice mist. The ice dragon's phantom raised its head in the void with an indescribable deterrent force, full of disdain. Those were 4 dark WRM beasts that were sufficient to make a sea spirit realm cultivator fearful, yet they were actually suppressed by the might emitted by Lin Sun at the same time. This seemed to be too terrifying. What kind of secret technique is this? How could it produce such a strong deterrent? On the other side, Bai Lingshi's eyes flashed with a strange light. Lin Sun had so many secrets that she was curious more than once about how many unknown secret methods and powers Lin Sun had mastered. "Oh, you're Lin Sun?" Suddenly, a wave of extremely feminine laughter resounded out, and accompanying this voice was a blood-rogue young man that walked out from the dark WIRM treasured carriage. His skin was white like a woman's, his face handsome, and he carried a bewitching aura. Especially his eyes. They flowed with blood-colored lightning as they blinked, causing him to seem extremely terrifying. This was Ling Tianho, Zhao Jingyin. Judging from his appearance, he did not look like a heavenly talent who had made a name for himself in the frontier battlefield at all. Instead, he looked like a graceful young master of a noble family. However, when he appeared, many people's eyes narrowed and revealed looks of dread. They all knew that under Ling Tianho's handsome appearance, there was a demonic heart. Not bad. Lin Sun nodded. Just from the other's question, he knew that the black dragon beast's collision with him, just now, was by no means a coincidence. "You do look as young as the rumors say, but you don't seem to be as daring as the rumors say." Ling Tianho's voice was feminine, and when paired with his almost demonic face, he gave off a unique temperament. "What do you think is daring?" Lin Sun asked. "If I were you, and a beast like this dared to collide with me, I would kill it first, then I would kill its master," Ling Tianho slowly said, but his words were filled with killing intent that made people's hearts go cold. This is what you call being truly daring. Some of the nearby people secretly sucked in a breath of cold air. After 5 years, not only did Ling Tianho's surly personality not change, it had become even worse. Lin Sun let out an "oh" and suddenly threw out a palm. With a bang, the head of the black dragon beast exploded and blood splattered everywhere. Everyone's hearts trembled, and they exclaimed, "Who would have thought that Lin Sun would suddenly make a move and kill a black dragon beast that Ling Tianho had raised in front of him? I indeed don't have much courage, but I still have the courage to kill a beast. Are you satisfied now?" Lin Sun asked with a smile and a calm expression. "But in my opinion, you're still too timid." Ling Tianho didn't seem to be angry and only looked at Lin Sun indifferently. Bang! Just as he finished speaking, another black dragon beast's head was crushed by Lin Sun. This startled the other two black dragon beasts and caused them to roar in fear. The nearby people all had shocked expressions on their faces. Even now, they still didn't understand why Ling Tianho would suddenly stop the carriage and find Lin Sun. They also didn't expect Lin Sun, who was already so domineering and fierce, to be on par with Ling Tianho. This was the white jade road that led from the inner city to the palace. It was sacred and majestic, but whether it was Ling Tianho or Lin Sun, neither of them had any scruples. This was too terrifying. Today was the Empress' 300th birthday. If the two of them were to cause trouble like this, wouldn't they be afraid of being punished? What about now? Lin Sun continued to ask with a smile, but there was no trace of emotion in his eyes. Still unbearable. Ling Tianho's voice was indifferent, and there was no trace of emotion on his handsome face. However, the nearby people were keenly aware that the atmosphere here was tense to the extreme and filled with the smell of gunpowder. The air seemed to have frozen, and it was so oppressive that it was difficult to breathe. Everyone knew that Lin Sun had killed the black flood dragon beasts again and again in front of Ling Tianho. Although it looked like he was testing his own courage, wasn't it also a form of retaliation against Ling Tianho? Moreover, this kind of retaliation was simple, direct, and violent. Then let's continue. Lin Sun smiled and raised his right hand once more. How could the remaining two black flood dragon beasts just sit and wait for death? When they noticed Lin Sun's killing intent, one of the black flood dragon beasts became even more ferocious and pounced toward Lin Sun. The other one let out a sad roar and hid behind Ling Tianho. Bang! Bang! With two loud bangs, the two black flood dragons were killed. One of them had its head crushed by Lin Sun. The other one was directly killed by Ling Tianho's palm and turned into minced meat. Its death was extremely terrifying. Seeing this, the nearby people couldn't help but tremble and find it impossible to calm down. Too strong. Whether it was Ling Tianho or Lin Sun, they were both using the most direct method to provoke each other. Neither was willing to take a step back. Even Bai Lingshir's eyes were filled with a hint of seriousness. What was originally an accidental conflict had developed to this point, and it was tantamount to sowing a blood feud. However, she was also puzzled. Lin Sun had only been in the Forbidden City for less than a year, and Ling Tianho had only just returned after 5 years. Why would Ling Tianho choose this time to suddenly provoke Lin Sun? These evil creatures are disgraceful. Their deaths are not to be regretted. Ling Tianho's voice was feminine and his eyes were cold. Now, what other way do you have to prove that you are very courageous? Lin Sun smiled. There is another way. In an instant, Ling Tianho's gaze became aggressive. His clothes fluttered and a powerful killing intent appeared around him. What method? The atmosphere here was tense and oppressive to the extreme. One could clearly see that the nearby space seemed to be unable to endure it. It became chaotic and wailed. "I'll just kill you." Lin Sun stopped smiling and said in a calm voice. But what he said shocked everyone present and almost made them cry out in surprise. "Ha!" Ling Tianho laughed at the sky. His feminine voice was like a moist cold stream that made people's hair stand on end. "You disappoint me too much. I originally thought that there would be another ruthless person in the Forbidden City that would make me look at you in a new light. Who would have thought that you were only SOSO? Ling Tianho revealed a hint of ruthlessness and disdain. "Do you know that if you were really courageous, you would have come to kill me immediately instead of waiting until now?" With that, under everyone's shocked gazes, Ling Tianho turned around and walked away without looking at Lin Sun again. "I won't kill you this time, but you can't escape punishment." I heard that it was you who repaired the apocalypse sword. If that's the case, then from today on, you can go to my mansion and serve me for 10 years. I can let bygones be bygones. Otherwise, the end of the birthday banquet will be the day you die. Think about it carefully. The feminine voice echoed as Ling Tianho's figure disappeared from the distant palace. Only now did everyone realize why the usually ferocious Ling Tianho didn't make a move against Lin Sun's provocation. His real purpose was to make Lin Sun work for him. No wonder he would suddenly provoke Lin Sun. It turned out that he valued Lin Sun's ability to repair the apocalypse sword. This caused everyone's mood to become strange. The headquarters of the Commune of Spirit Tattooists, the Imperial Academy of Spiritual Implements, and Green Deer Academy all offered generous rewards and sincerity in order to recruit Lin Sun. However, Ling Tianho seemed very different. He directly wanted to use his power to force Lin Sun to yield. He was extremely domineering. At this time, Lin Sun also understood. After thinking for a while, he shook his head and said to Bai Lingshi, "Let's go." With that, he didn't even look at the blood-stained body of the Black Flood Dragon beast and walked toward the distant palace. "You're not worried?" Bai Lingshi couldn't help but ask. "I'm not worried. I'm very angry." Lin Sun shrugged. "I was bullied for no reason. If there is a chance, I don't mind having a life and death battle with Ling Tianho to see who is more courageous." Bai Lingshi let out a sound of agreement and no longer said anything. Not long after the two of them left, the people nearby began to talk. "I didn't expect Ling Tianho to go against Lin Sun as soon as he came back. This is too shocking. He, the previous Lin Sun, would do some sensational things in the Forbidden City from time to time. Now he is targeted by someone as ruthless as Ling Tianho. He is doomed to be unlucky." Unlucky is true, but with Lin Sun's current identity and status, no matter how fierce Ling Tianho is, it will be very difficult for him to make Lin Sun yield. Interesting. The Emperor's birthday banquet hasn't even started, and there is already such a bloody conflict. Today's event is destined to not be so simple. That's right. Even Ling Tianho is back. How can this birthday banquet be ordinary? Let's go to the palace and take a look. P.S. The monthly votes have broken 400, so of course there will be 4 chapters tonight. It's just that the plot is a bit stuck, so the writing speed is a lot slower. Don't worry, everyone. There will definitely be 4 chapters. Chapter 426. There was a pond in front of the gate of the palace. In the pond, a spirit beast that looked like a green ox but had a pair of purple horns was lying lazily in the pond. Its eyes were closed, and it was snoring. Every figure that passed by this pool would slow down and reveal a fearful expression. They would cautiously enter the palace from the side, as if they were afraid of disturbing the sleeping spirit beast. When Lin Sun arrived, he couldn't help narrowing his eyes. This spirit beast didn't look amazing, but its whole body was full of a kind of terrifying aura. It seemed that when it woke up, it would turn into a monstrous monster that could stir up the wind and clouds. Purple-horned green centipede. In an instant, Lin Sun remembered a rumor that there was a legendary heaven-ranked spirit beast in the palace, named Purple-horned green centipede. It had monstrous power and was the mount of the founding emperor, which was enough to make people in the Tao Insight realm afraid of it. However, Lin Sun didn't expect that such a powerful spirit beast would appear in front of him so easily. After being stunned for a while, Lin Sun moved his eyes away and followed by Lingshi into the gate of the palace. After entering the palace, there was another scene. Ancient buildings were arranged in order, which were magnificent and spacious. The ground was paved with glazed white jade. In the center, there was a furnace for sacrifice, an imperial road specially built for the current emperor, and an auxiliary road for the important ministers of the imperial court. Everywhere was full of the dignity of the royal family. Moreover, the further they went forward, the more magnificent and divine the scenery that appeared before them became, and it caused them to unconsciously arouse reverence in their hearts. When they passed by a clear lake, there was a burst of exclamation. In the lake, there was suddenly a bright golden glow, shining with dazzling and illusory luster in the morning light. It was a school of spiritual fish that was over a foot long. They had golden scales and dragon whiskers hanging from their lips. Their eyes were sparkling and translucent, and their entire bodies were suffused with golden spiritual light. Golden wave, arowana. Many people revealed looks of shock. This was a strange species of this world, and it was extremely rare. Yet now, it was being raised in the imperial palace, appearing in groups. This was just too shocking. Oh, look at the lakeside. There is a 7-colored holy lotus with 36 blossoms and yin and yang leaves. This is a rare spiritual medicine. Not long after, a 7-colored lotus that was swaying by the lake also caused an uproar. In the air, one could almost smell the refreshing medicinal fragrance. As expected of the imperial palace, it's so beautiful that it's hard to compare to the outside world. Many sighs of emotion could be heard. The 7-colored holy lotus was an extraordinary and peerless spirit medicine, and it caused many great cultivators to feel covetous and extremely envious. What do you know? This is only the tip of the iceberg. If you have the opportunity to enter the imperial garden, you will discover what a true treasure is. A nobleman dressed in luxurious clothes said indifferently. It was obvious that he often went to the palace and was very familiar with everything. Even Lin Sun couldn't help but click his tongue when he heard this. In his eyes, every area of the palace was magnificent and sacred. Not only there were all kinds of rare treasures and spiritual birds, but even the trees standing everywhere had a long history. Everyone, you can take a look, but you can't touch it. Be careful not to invite trouble upon yourself. Someone reminded him. Instantly, the hearts of many shook, and their minds became much clearer. Even if such rare treasures could be seen everywhere, they belonged to the current royal family, and no one else could touch them at all. Continuing to move forward, Lin Sun and Bai Lingshi came to a huge square, and further ahead was the Central Imperial Palace. This birthday banquet was arranged in the Central Imperial Palace. But the birthday banquet hadn't started yet, so the guests who came to celebrate the birthday could only wait in this square for the time being. Tables and futons had already been set up around the square for guests to rest. When Lin Sun and Bai Lingshi arrived, there were already many figures gathered here, including important ministers of the empire who had been in high positions for a long time, powerful nobles, and famous great cultivators, of course. There were also many descendants of aristocratic families who came with their elders. I'm going to meet some friends. When they arrived here, Bai Lingshi and Lin Sun separated and went straight to the distance, where several young men and women were waving to Bai Lingshi. Lin Sun wandered around alone. He didn't know most of the people here, and he was too lazy to talk or make friends with them. There were some arch bridges, reliefs, and stone statues distributed on the square, all of which were exquisite and soon attracted Lin Sun's attention. What surprised Lin Sun most was that these sceneries were all engraved with dense spiritual tattoos. There were flowers, birds, insects, fish, the sun, the moon, and the stars, as well as pictures of ancestors offering sacrifices and sages chanting scriptures, which gave people a kind of ancient atmosphere. After studying for a long time, Lin Sun couldn't help but think. He had seen that whether it was the arch bridges, reliefs, stone statues, or even the nearby buildings, the spiritual tattoos were not isolated, but formed a complete connection with each other. If his speculation was right, this square and even the Central Imperial Palace in the distance were actually covered by a vast ancient spiritual formation. Suddenly, a conversation sounded, which made Lin Sun frown. Hey, Lin Sun is in trouble now. He offended Ling Tianho, a ruthless man. He is doomed to suffer. This kid has been arrogant for a while. It's time for someone to take him down a peg. Otherwise, how can the Forbidden City tolerate him in the future? Just wait and see. This kid has offended too many people. Sooner or later, he will be punished. Hearing such impolite curses and attacks, Lin Sun was a little surprised. He looked up and saw some men and women pointing at him not far away. Among them, there were Hua Wuyo and Hua Wuan. Lin Sun suddenly understood that he had met his old friends. He smiled and directly walked over. As he walked, he smiled and said, "Isn't this Miss Hua and Child Hua? I haven't seen you for a long time, but you are still living freely. Hua Wuyo and her brother's faces suddenly became gloomy. A few months ago, in the Tianwu arena, Hua Wuyo almost died in Lin Sun's hands. Seeing Lin Sun deliberately ridiculing them, how could they not be angry? What do you want? Hua Wuyo said coldly. The people around her also looked unhappy. Lin Sun directly came to humiliate them. It was too arrogant. What do I want? Lin Sun said with a smile. I just want to ask, when will we have another life and death duel? How dare you? Hua Wuhan was furious. Lin Sun was obviously provoking her. Ling Tianho just said that I am not bold enough, but you say that I am bold enough. Why don't you try to see whether I am bold or not? Lin Sun squinted at Hua Wuhan. Let's go. Hua Wuyo grabbed Hua Wuhan and turned around to leave. She was afraid that she could not control her emotions and fight with Lin Sun here, which would have a bad influence. The others also glared at Lin Sun and turned around to leave. Why are these guys so timid? Lin Sun stood where he was and seemed to be a little disappointed. In fact, he was really disappointed. First, he was provoked by Ling Tianho, and now he was cursed by Hua Wuyo. How could Lin Sun not be angry? Suddenly, he glanced at the other side and saw many people gloating at him. Among them, there were two old acquaintances, Song Chongha and Song Zhe of the Song family. Was it coincidence? Not really. After all, whether it was Hua Wuyo or Song Chongha, they were all disciples of the top aristocratic families. This time, they were brought here by their elders to broaden their horizons. Bro, do you remember what Shiryu warned you about at the Smiling Daughter Pavilion the other time? Your fiancé has been defiled by this guy in secret, yet you're still with him? Aren't you being too magnanimous? Lin Sun stepped forward and said to Song Zhe with a smile. His words were like a slap in Song Zhe's face. Not only Song Zhe's face darkened, but also Song Chongha's face turned livid with anger. You don't go too far. Song Zhe gritted his teeth. I kindly reminded you, but you didn't appreciate it. Alas, you are such a poor man. Your wife has been raped, but you still don't know it. Why don't you just call yourself Green Hat Child? Lin Sun smiled brightly, but his words were vicious. Seeing that Song Zhe and Song Chongha were about to lose their temper, he turned around and left leisurely. After venting his anger, Lin Sun's accumulated anger finally subsided a lot. He even wanted to continue, so he looked around, trying to meet some old acquaintances. His behavior was obviously arrogant, as if he was looking for revenge everywhere. This was the forbidden area of the Imperial Palace. Even the bigwigs dared not to make trouble here. This was also the reason why Hua Wuyo and Song Zhe dared not to make a move, even though they were angry. However, Lin Sun seemed to be fearless, which made them feel so aggrieved that they couldn't wait to skin Lin Sun alive and burn his bones to ashes. In fact, Lin Sun was aware of this. He believed that he had never provoked anyone, but there were many people who provoked him. It would be too hard for him to bear it. What was more, the sword of apocalypse in the hands of the Empress was repaired by him. Lin Sun believed that if the Empress appreciated it, she would not punish him for it. Of course, it didn't matter. What mattered was that when he arrived here and saw the central Imperial Palace in the distance, Lin Sun suddenly realized a problem. Would the big shot who promised to turn the Forbidden City upside down show up here today? Lin Sun still remembered clearly that the big shot didn't show up in Tianwu Arena last time, but he stopped the confrontation between Zhu Laosan and Hua Qinglin with an ancient sword of broken plum. The ancient sword of broken plum was an important weapon of the royal family. Ordinary members of the royal family couldn't use it at all. Out of these considerations, Lin Sun really wanted to make a scene here to see if he could force the big shot to show up. Looking around, Lin Sun finally saw another acquaintance. But the appearance of this acquaintance surprised Lin Sun a little. Why did she come here? In the far distance, many figures gathered around a slender and graceful figure, like stars surrounding the moon, as they leisurely walked towards the square. Chapter 427. The woman had a graceful figure and a bright and clear face. She was surrounded by stars. Although her appearance was not beautiful, her beauty was like a green lotus, not ostentatious or dazzling, pure and gentle, which made people feel comfortable and dare not blaspheme her. She could be called a peerless beauty. She was Lu Qingyan, an artistic practitioner who was famous all over the world and sought after by countless people. In today's empire, Lu Qingyan was simply a transcendent existence. She was not only loved by the young talents, but also appreciated by some dignitaries. In the eyes of many people, Lu Qingyan was as dazzling as the sun. But Lin Sun never thought that he would meet Lu Qingyan at the 300th birthday party of the Empress. He hadn't seen her for almost a year since they parted last time. Now that they met again, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a little emotional when he thought of the days when he met Lu Qingyan in Mist City. He also had a good impression of Lu Qingyan. He felt that her temperament was like jade, clean and gentle, which made people easily feel good about her. Moreover, when Lin Sun tried to break through the third test of Green Cloud Path, secret realm of 100 battles, he was eroded by inner demons and almost lost his mind. Finally, with the comfort of Lu Qingyan's flute, the disaster was resolved and the danger was averted. Finally, he successfully broke through the secret realm of 100 battles. Therefore, for Lin Sun, Lu Qingyan was also his life-saving benefactor. Miss Qingyan is also here. Haha, it's really a surprise to see the legendary Miss Lu Qingyan at the birthday party of the Empress. I heard that Miss Qingyan specially composed a new song to celebrate the current Emperor and Empress. We may be able to enjoy it today. With the arrival of Lu Qingyan, it immediately caused a lot of sensation. Young childs didn't hide their love for her. Even some of the nobles showed a hint of joy on their faces. From this, it could be seen how great Lu Qingyan's influence was. Although she was just an art practitioner, there were only a few people in the entire empire who could enjoy such treatment. Lin Sun originally wanted to come forward and say hello, but when he saw many people gathered around to greet Lu Qingyan, he finally gave up. Lin Sun, you're here too? But who would have thought that at this time, Lu Qingyan and the crowd suddenly found Lin Sun. A touch of joy appeared on her beautiful face. She laughed aloud and took the lead to wave to Lin Sun. All the people present were stunned and widened their eyes. They couldn't believe that Lu Qingyan, who was loved by them, would take the initiative to greet Lin Sun at this time. This treatment was too unfair. Did they know each other before? The scene suddenly became a little strange. Taking advantage of this opportunity, Lu Qingyan walked out of the crowd and came to Lin's side. She said with joy, "I finally see you again." Her jet black and beautiful hair was tied behind her head with a wooden hairpin, and her forehead was fair and smooth, while her clear eyes were lively. When she smiled, her snow-white teeth were slightly revealed while faint dimples appeared on her cheeks. She seemed to be both happy and angry at the same time, and she seemed to be exceptionally beautiful and tender. "I didn't expect to meet you here, either," Lin Sun said with a smile, but he sighed with emotion in his heart that the girl in front of him was still the same as before. Her eyes were bright and kind, making people feel like bathing in the spring breeze. Lu Qingyan chuckled and said, "There are too many people here. Let's go over there. I have a lot of questions to ask you." As she said, she naturally pulled Lin Sun's sleeves and walked away. Seeing this scene, many young people showed jealousy on their faces. They had never seen Lu Qingyan take the initiative to be so close to anyone before. How could Lin Sun enjoy such treatment? The heavens were too unfair. Even some bigwigs couldn't help but be stunned when they saw this. When did Lin Sun win Lu Qingyan's favor? It was no wonder that the people present reacted so strongly. Lu Qingyan was so famous that her every move would be noticed by countless people. Under such circumstances, she suddenly acted so close to Lin Sun, which would naturally make others have various ideas. Damn it! If Lin Sun dares to blaspheme Miss Qingyan, I will be the first to punish him. Yes, how could a down-and-out young master of the Lin family get close to Miss Qingyan? Where is Granny Wind? Why didn't she show up today? If she were here, she would not let such a thing happen. Those young people were indignant, and their tone was sour, mixed with envy and jealousy. In the distance, Lin Sun also heard these comments and couldn't help but feel helpless. I finally understand what it means to be a femme fatale. If Granny Wind were here, she might really kill me. Lu Qingyan chuckled and said, "Let's talk among ourselves. Don't worry about it." Lin Sun touched his nose and shrugged. That's the only way. There was no estrangement between them after a long separation. Instead, they talked happily like a pair of old friends. Lu Qingyan asked Lin Sun about what he had experienced after leaving Mist City. Lin Sun didn't hide anything and simply told her. Lu Qingyan listened with relish and finally said, I didn't expect that you had experienced so many things in this year. But now you have finally made it. Rumors about you can be heard everywhere in the Forbidden City. Lin Sun said casually, people are afraid of fame as pigs are afraid of being fat. I have offended a lot of people. As he was talking, there was a sudden exclamation in the distance. Song Yi, the number one of this year's nation test, is also here. Isn't it said that all the freshmen who entered Green Deer School have gone to the land of killing souls for a 3-month trial? Obviously, Song Yi didn't go there. I feel that the reason why he didn't go there is that he came here specifically to attend this birthday party. After all, with his identity, he is likely to be appreciated by those great practitioners from mysterious regions. In the exclamation, a handsome and dignified young man in a blue robe came to the square under the surprised gaze of a group of people. Obviously, he was Song Yi, the first place of this year's nation test, a young talent whose rank was even higher than Qi, Songfeng, and Bai Lingshi. Lin Sun couldn't help but raise his eyebrows. It was not because of Song Yi, but he also remembered that Shi Yu and Ning Meng had gone to the land of killing souls for more than a month. He didn't know how they were doing now. Just when Lin Sun collected his thoughts and planned to continue chatting with Lu Qingyan, another exclamation sounded. Qi Songfeng, the genius of Qi family, who is called a genius of swordsmanship, is also here. Lin Sun narrowed his eyes and saw a young man with a golden feather crown on his head, surrounded by purple air and fierce and arrogant eyebrows appeared on the square, not far away. His entire person was like an unsheathed sharp sword, showing off its edge. Suddenly, Lin Sun remembered that when he just arrived at the Forbidden City, he was intercepted by this young man. At that time, Qi Songfeng had already reached the Sea Spirit Realm, which made Lin Sun, who was only at the Heaven Gang realm, in danger. If the old man of Heiyao Shrine hadn't appeared, Lin Sun almost used the shocking bead to kill Qi Songfeng. Thinking of this, Lin Sun couldn't help but feel a trace of killing intent in his heart. He would not forget this hatred, but immediately he forced himself to bear it. This was the core forbidden area of the palace. Even if he dared to kill Qi Songfeng, he would inevitably encounter many obstacles. It was impossible for him to do whatever he wanted. With the arrival of Song Yi and Qi Songfeng, the atmosphere in the square suddenly became much more lively. But this was not the end. Before long, many famous talents appeared, which aroused a lot of attention and discussion. Some talents were even more dazzling than Song Yi, Qi Songfeng, and Bai Lingshi. But most of those names were strange to Lin Sun because it was the first time he heard them. For example, Yin Fuchen was the first in the nation test 3 years ago. Now he was an outstanding figure in the martial arts branch of Green Deer School and ranked 9th on the Sea Spirit Gold list. Yu Qizhe was a bright rising star in the martial arts branch of the Imperial Army. He had been fighting on the battlefield since he was a child. Although he was only 17 years old now, his cultivation had reached the mastery of Sea Spirit, and his fighting capacity was extremely abnormal. Just like, all in all of them were extraordinary existences. In the past, it was very rare for them to gather together. Yet now, all of them had arrived in succession, and it was an extremely shocking scene. Even Lin Sun couldn't help being a little surprised. He had heard from Bai Lingshi that there would be many famous talents at today's birthday party, but he didn't expect that there would be so many of them. They must have come for the opportunity to enter the ancient desolation domain. After all, such opportunities are too rare, and they can only be found by chance. If you miss it once, you might not be able to find another opportunity to enter the ancient desolation domain in your lifetime. Lu Qingyan also noticed this situation, but she didn't seem to be surprised and explained to Lin Sun casually. The ancient desolation territory. Lin Sun was shocked. Yes, it said that there are many Taoist orthodoxies and many blessed places for cultivation. There are unimaginable resources for cultivation. Only there can we find a real, perfect way of cultivation. Lu Qingyan said softly. Lin Sun was shocked. If he guessed right, the ancient desolation territory mentioned by Lu Qingyan was the same place as the mysterious place mentioned by Bai Lingshi. In other words, the mysterious heaven-reaching sword sect, where Yun Qingbai was very likely to be in the ancient desolation territory. In this way, the murderer of the bloody incident in Lin family more than 10 years ago naturally came from the ancient desolation territory. After a short shock, Lin Sun couldn't help looking at Lu Qingyan with a strange look. Even Bai Lingshi didn't know the name, but Lu Qingyan knew it. From this, it could be seen that Lu Qingyan was not just a famous art practitioner in the world. Do you know much about the ancient desolation territory? Lin Sun took a deep breath and asked if he could get more information about this place, or even find out what kind of existence the heaven-reaching sword sect was. It would undoubtedly provide more clues for him to avenge his parents and clansmen in the future. P.S. Here's the fourth update. I'm stuck today. If it weren't for everyone's support, I might have given up and gone to sleep. Chapter 428. Lu Qingyan shook her head. I've only heard about it occasionally. Lin Sun was a little disappointed. Lu Qingyan was intelligent and knew that Lin Sun was in a bad mood at a glance. She said gently, Child Lin, there are masters from the ancient desolation territory at this birthday party. With your current reputation and strength, as long as you perform well, you may be able to seize this opportunity and get what you want to know. Lin Sun smiled and said, It depends. As time went by, more and more guests gathered in the square, and it became more and more lively. Almost all of them were dignitaries. Any one of them might be a famous big shot or an outstanding talent in the younger generation. Lin Sun's existence also attracted a lot of attention. They would talk about him more or less. For example, some big shots talked about heart-cleansing Peak and Lin Daochen, Lin Sun's great-grandfather. They sighed with emotion that there was finally a rising star worthy of attention in the declining Lin family. Those who were crazy about martial arts talked about the duel between Lin Sun and Hua Wuyo and analyzed Lin Sun's attainments and achievements in martial arts. Some big shots who were proficient in spiritual tattoos were curious about Lin Sun's ability to repair the Sword of Apocalypse. There were also some who hated and excluded Lin Sun. They talked about some things that were not good for Lin Sun. For example, since he entered the Forbidden City, he had offended too many forces. Sooner or later, he would be punished and attacked. In a word, whether it was praise or derogation, all this at least proved that Lin Sun's reputation was not only spread among ordinary people. Even some big shots in the upper class of the Forbidden City had noticed his existence. Of course, the existence of Lin Sun was just one of the topics in the square, not the most eye-catching one. This was normal. Those who came to the birthday party this time had enough capital to be proud, whether they were dignitaries with high status or talents. Although Lin Sun's rising momentum was very fierce, it was impossible to attract much attention after all. At least the talents such as Song Yi, Qi Songfeng, Yun Fuchen, and Yu Qizhe received much more attention than Lin Sun. Even Lu Qingyan received more attention than Lin Sun. This was a matter of foundation. Perhaps his natural talent was extraordinary, and he possessed many methods that were worthy of admiration. But he came from the Lin clan that had declined a long time ago. In terms of status and identity, he was obviously far inferior to some of the other disciples of prestigious families. If it were 500 years ago, when Lin family was still an upper-class force in the Forbidden City, the attention Lin Sun received would be completely different. Lin Sun didn't care much about these things. His path was different from that of the others present, so he naturally wouldn't care about the so-called false reputation. Not long after, a melodious and ancient bell rang out. Everyone in the square stopped what they were doing, and the clamorous discussions stopped as well. For a moment, the atmosphere in the square became solemn and silent. All eyes turned to the central imperial palace in the distance. The auspicious time has come. Ladies and gentlemen, please enter the palace. A sound that was like the sound of a morning bell resounded in this expanse of the heavens and the earth. It surged through the 9 heavens, and it carried a shocking force that struck directly at the heart. Shortly after, the tightly shut gates of the central imperial palace slowly opened. 2 rows of beautiful palace maids walked out and stood respectfully on both sides of the steps leading to the central imperial palace. The 300th birthday banquet of the empress began. At the moment, the guests in the square, led by the palace maids, walked towards the central imperial palace. I'll go to prepare first. You must listen to the new song I composed at the birthday banquet. Thanks to you, this song can be completed so smoothly. Lu Qingyan blinked her eyes and said goodbye to Lin Sun with a smile. She would sing for the empress today and needed to prepare. Thanks to me. Lin Sun was stunned and watched Lu Qingyan leave. He couldn't help but feel a little curious. How did this new song have anything to do with him? While thinking, he had been led by a palace made along the 99 steps into the most supreme and sacred palace in the empire, the Central Imperial Palace. Magnificent, splendid, majestic. This was Lin Sun's feeling when he first entered the Central Imperial Palace. He saw that the palace was like a small world. Above his head were the images of the sun, moon, and stars, and below his feet were the shapes of mountains and rivers. Being in it and looking around, he seemed particularly small. Within the palace, 108 stone pillars constructed from violet stone stood towering. They were carved with dragons and phoenixes, branded with patterns of clouds, golden light, auspicious signs, violet flowers, and other gorgeous patterns, and they overflowed with brilliant colors, causing them to seem divine and extraordinary. Looking from a distance, the stone pillars seemed to be holding up the top of the sky. Lin Sun felt shocked in his heart. The hall was filled with an indescribable majestic and sacred aura, which shocked the soul. No one dared to act rashly here. Indeed, not only Lin Sun, but also other guests who arrived, no matter how great their status was, all showed solemn expressions at the moment and dared not speak loudly. This was the Central Imperial Palace. Not long after, Lin Sun sat in front of the table on the side of the palace under the arrangement of the palace maids. On the table, there was a pot of wine, a cup of tea, and a plate of spiritual fruit. It was very simple and didn't look sumptuous. However, those with a bit of eyesight, when they saw all of this, all of them revealed expressions of shock, joy appearing on their faces, and sighed in admiration. That pot of wine was 9 Dragon Spiritual Emperor, a special imperial brew. It was said that it was brewed by dozens of top brewers who collected hundreds of kinds of rare treasures in the world and brewed after hundreds of years of precipitation. Just a pot of wine was invaluable. It was no exaggeration to say that it couldn't be enjoyed in the outside world at all. On the other hand, the cup of tea was light violet in color, enshrouded with spirit light, and mist curled up into the air. The tea leaves were shaped like dragons and phoenixes, and the tea flowed, enshrouded within the cup, while emanating a cold and pure fragrance that struck directly at the depths of the soul. This tea was called Dragon and Phoenix Auspicious, which was also used by the imperial palace. As for the plate of spiritual fruit, there was a golden silk date, a purple jade peach, and 3 lotus seeds like crystal black gems. These 3 spiritual fruits were planted in the imperial garden and were rare treasures. Each of them had its own magic and could be called peerless spiritual objects. Just from these, it could be seen how high the standard of the emperor's birthday banquet was. It was a great honor to be able to sit in the imperial palace and enjoy such a birthday banquet. At this time, even Lin Sun had to sigh with emotion about the wealth of the imperial royal family. Only the imperial royal family could have such a big spending. When all the guests were seated, at the end of the hall, a white-haired old man in a dark purple court dress said, "Welcome, Empress." His voice was like the morning bell and evening drum, showing his terrible cultivation. Director Peng's cultivation is getting more and more exquisite. I'm afraid he has reached the high level of reincarnation development realm. A low murmur of discussion sounded. Obviously, this white-haired old man was also a tyrannical existence in the imperial palace. But soon, Lin Sun's attention was attracted by the end of the hall, where there seemed to be an illusory scene filled with golden light and purple clouds. Vaguely, a female figure could be seen sitting on the throne. There was invisible spiritual light around her, and her face couldn't be seen clearly. But just a glance made Lin Sun feel awe, as if he was not facing a figure, but a supreme king who could shock the whole world. Compared with her, the white-haired Director Peng suddenly became dim, like a grain of rice completely submerged by the light of the sun and the moon. What kind of terrifying cultivation does he have to have such an aura? Lin Sun was shocked and couldn't calm down. There was no doubt that the one sitting on the throne was the Empress. It was said that she was a real life-death realm king who had assisted the current emperor to ascend the throne for hundreds of years. In the imperial family, except for the current emperor, the emperor's power was the most monstrous. At this moment, the atmosphere in the hall was extremely solemn, and all the guests stood up and saluted. "Greetings, Empress!" The voice echoed in the brilliant imperial palace with its own solemn momentum. "Everyone, please take your seats." On the throne, the voice of the Empress came out. The voice was gentle and calm, without any power, but no one dared to blaspheme her. When the guests returned to their seats, Manager Peng began to read a long and eloquent birthday speech, his voice rising and falling in cadence. In the end, Director Peng took out a jade archive and began to read the list of birthday gifts. This was the process of birthday wishes. All the guests present had already presented their birthday gifts. When the list of birthday gifts was read out, the birthday feast officially began. When Lin Sun decided to attend the birthday feast, he also prepared a birthday gift and entrusted Shin Tuo to send it to the imperial family. Manager Peng spoke in a clear voice, reading out a long list of birthday gifts. Jinghai Marquis Mansion, a colorful lion, a 3,000-year-old Xuanji flower, and a jade phoenix pendant of blue cloud sea. Wenyuan Marquis Mansion, a painting of pine and crane offering longevity, a bottle of purple-green jade pill, and a pair of Sun Moon Mystic Light bracelets. Baoang Marquis Mansion. The birthday gifts were more amazing and rich than the other. When they were read out, there was an uproar in the hall. Treasures such as snow fulling, 9-leaf ruchine pill, and 8 treasures Huanjin powder might be regarded as peerless treasures in the outside world, but they were quite ordinary in the list of birthday gifts. It could be said that in order to celebrate the birthday of the Empress, those dignitaries obviously spent a lot of effort. The birthday gifts they took out were unique, rare, auspicious, and inestimable. Lin Sun sat there and listened to these, and he couldn't help sighing with emotion in his heart. These dignitaries in the upper class were really rich. The treasures they took out were so rare and unique that he had never heard of them. Just when Lin Sun was sighing, Director Peng's voice suddenly paused, and then he read out, "Lin of Heart-Cleansing Peak, a jade hairpin." All the people present were stunned. Just a jade hairpin? Lin Sun was a spiritual tattoo master now. How could he take out a jade hairpin as a birthday gift to the Empress? This was too shabby, wasn't it? All of a sudden, many people looked at Lin Sun, and their expressions became more or less subtle. Chapter 429. The atmosphere became subtle, and so did the expressions of the guests, more or less revealing a hint of playfulness. Some of the young nobles couldn't help but sneer. Obviously, they thought that Lin Sun's birthday gift was too shameful. A jade hairpin? What the hell was this? When Steward Peng read out the birthday gift, he didn't introduce this jade hairpin at all. Obviously, it was not a rare treasure that had been passed down for a long time. This kind of thing could be given to a little girl, but it was too shabby to be given to the Empress as a birthday gift. Fortunately, this was the Central Imperial Palace. There were not only many big shots present, but the Empress also sat on the throne, so those young people didn't dare to act rashly. Otherwise, according to their temperament, they would have ridiculed and laughed out loud. Lin Sun was not stupid. Of course, he could perceive the change in the atmosphere, but he didn't care about it. The jade hairpin he gave had no origin and was made by himself. But this jade hairpin was not as simple as wearing. He believed that the Empress would not be disappointed if she knew what it was. After reading out Lin Sun's birthday gift, Steward Peng put away the gift list, with a trace of imperceptible strangeness in his expression. Obviously, he didn't know about the jade hairpin given by Lin Sun. He only knew that it was a jade hairpin. As an old man in the imperial palace, he naturally thought of Lin Sun's great-grandfather, Lin Daochen. He couldn't help but sigh in his heart. At that time, Lin Daochen was so powerful that he was respected and remembered by the empire, even after his death. But now, Lin family didn't fall into such a predicament. Even its lineal descendants couldn't take out some decent birthday gifts to attend the birthday banquet, which was really sad. Steward Peng stopped thinking about it. The birthday gift list had been read out, and then the birthday banquet would officially begin. However, before he could speak, the gentle and calm voice of the Empress suddenly sounded on the throne, surrounded by auspicious clouds. Reward. It was only a single word, but it was like a clap of thunder that shocked everyone present. Reward? To whom? Whose birthday gift could please the Empress so much that she made an exception and issued a decree at such a moment? Many people couldn't help but be moved, and their imaginations roamed. They started to recall exactly who on the list of birthday gifts would be able to obtain such an honor. Some of the great figures who were confident that their gifts would be ranked at the top had even begun to look forward to it. They hoped that this reward would fall onto their heads. Even Chief Steward Peng was a little surprised. He had never thought that such a situation would happen. He did not even prepare any rewards in advance. Chief Steward Peng was about to ask when he saw a pale green light fly out from the throne. In an instant, it fell on Lin Sun's desk under the watchful eyes of the crowd. Everyone was dumbfounded. How is this possible? Among all the birthday gifts, Lin Sun's jade hairpin was the most shabby. Why did the Empress make an exception to reward him? Everyone's mood suddenly became complicated. Previously, they thought that Lin Sun's birthday gift was shameful. But in the blink of an eye, a reward from the Empress fell on Lin Sun's head. Who could imagine that such a thing would happen? Was this jade hairpin not as simple as they thought? The voice of the Empress came from the throne. This jade hairpin is very to my liking. It's very good. You deserve to be the spiritual tattoo master who caused the vision of 9 dragons chant. There's an elixir in that bottle. Take it as my gratitude. Hiss. Many people gasped. It was more than a reward. At this time, the Empress praised Lin Sun in person to show her gratitude, which was so rare. Some clear-minded people instantly guessed from the words of the Empress that the jade hairpin must be refined by Lin Sun himself. So she praised him as a spiritual tattoo master. It was easy to understand why Chief Steward Peng didn't introduce the name and origin of the jade hairpin when he read out the birthday gifts. This was a treasure newly refined by Lin Sun. Since it was a birthday gift for the Empress, he naturally wouldn't overstep his authority and name it. Having figured this out, many people looked at Lin Sun with complicated eyes. This was the means of a spiritual tattoo master. They had no choice but to admire him. But they were still curious about what kind of jade hairpin could win the favor and favor of the Empress. Could it be that this jade hairpin was even more precious than the other gifts? Unfortunately, neither the Empress nor Lin Sun would explain anything to the jade hairpin. The reason was very simple. If the jade hairpin could be used with the Sword of Apocalypse, it would produce a wonderful effect. In short, the jade hairpin and the Sword of Apocalypse could completely complement each other and produce more powerful power. The Sword of Apocalypse was the most precious treasure in the hands of the Empress. The jade hairpin given by Lin Sun was naturally an unexpected surprise for the Empress. Feeling the changes in the eyes cast on him, Lin Sun was quite grateful. This action of the Empress was tantamount to helping him fight back against those who looked down on him. Thank you so much, Empress. Lin Sun stood up and saluted to express his gratitude. Have a seat. Lin Sun sat down again, and his eyes fell on the table. The reward of the Empress was placed there. It was an exquisite, small suet jade bottle with the thickness of a thumb. There was an obscure and strange secret pattern sealed on the mouth of the jade bottle. Just by looking at the spirit emitted by the secret pattern, Lin Sun knew that the elixir in it must be extraordinary. Not only Lin Sun, But also other big shots present knew that the elixir given by the Empress couldn't be ordinary. This made many people secretly envious. Lin Sun was really lucky this time. It was worth it to exchange a jade hairpin for an elixir in the hands of the Empress. Some people were also looking forward to see what kind of elixir was in the bottle, but to their disappointment, Lin Sun didn't even look at it and directly put the bottle away. This little episode passed in a flash. Steward Peng announced the beginning of the birthday banquet again. Immediately, outside the gate of the Central Imperial Palace, a group of male and female musicians, dressed in splendid costumes, holding various musical instruments such as pipa, flute, bell, and guqin, filed in. The leader of the group was Lu Qingyan. But unlike in the past, she changed her makeup this time. Her long black hair was coiled into a bun, and she wore an imperial military uniform, exuding a sense of competence and neatness. I'm Lu Qingyan. I lead the musicians to pay a visit to your Royal Highness. I'm not talented, but I'd like to sing a song to congratulate your Royal Highness for everlasting youth and longevity. Lu Qingyan and the other musicians bowed to him. Get up. I've heard for a long time that among the artistic practitioners of the Empire, you are the best. What's the name of the song you're going to sing this time? The Empress asked gently. Your Royal Highness will know as soon as you hear it. Lu Qingyan smiled lightly. Well, let's get started. Suddenly, an open space was vacated in the center of the hall. Lu Qingyan stood in the center, facing the throne at the end of the hall, and behind her were a group of musicians. At this moment, Lu Qingyan's expression was tranquil. Her beautiful face was full of solemnity. Coupled with her neat military uniform, she looked even more heroic. Everyone couldn't help but look forward to it. Many young men from aristocratic families even showed their obsession. Obviously, they were also excited to be able to listen to Lu Qingyan singing. Even for Lin Sun, it was the first time that he had encountered such an opportunity to be present and listen to Lu Qingyan singing. He couldn't help but feel curious. How did this legendary artistic practitioner, who was famous throughout the empire, a girl who was fanatically pursued by countless young people, get such achievements today? Now, the answer would be revealed. Clang, clang, clang. A wave of the impassioned sound of a pipa solo resounded out. The sound was like a powerful army that surged through the hall, and it was filled with a powerful and sonorous force that was like an unrestrained ocean that suddenly roared furiously. For a moment, everyone was in a trance, as if they were in the frontier battlefield and saw countless imperial men fighting to protect their homes and defend their country. There were killings everywhere, smoke everywhere, mountains of corpses and seas of blood everywhere. Immediately, the sound of zither, flute, drum began to enter one after another, making the whole song more complete, more passionate, more undulating, and more varied. Just like on the bloody battlefield, there was an endless stream of good men of the Empire, charging into the enemy lines without fear of death. No matter how cruel the enemy was, they were fearless. The music was not tragic, but it made people's blood surge. Their emotions seemed to be controlled by invisible hands, constantly fermenting and accumulating like a volcano and about to erupt. Those influential and great figures recalled the extraordinary years of the past, recalled the hot-bloodedness and heroism of battle on the battlefield, and recalled how they treated their fellow comrades with sincerity when they went through life and death together. Those young people were all full of lofty sentiments. They couldn't wait to shed their blood on the battlefield and fight with the enemy. Even Lin Sun's skin was covered with a layer of goosebumps. The music was so passionate, hot-blooded, and majestic that it was impossible not to be moved. When the music reached a peak and everyone's emotions were about to be accumulated to the limit, Lu Qingyan, standing in the center, opened her cherry lips and sang. The red sun rises, and its light is great. The voice was clear, bright, and with a force that went straight to the soul, suddenly resounded, making the music, which had already been surging to the limit, rise again. It was just a few words, but it gave the entire piece of music a new kind of power. Everyone felt their scalp tingling and the boiling emotions that had been accumulated in their hearts were completely ignited and exploded in their chests. They were immersed in it completely and could not extricate themselves. This was the power of sound. Artistic practitioners practiced the great way of music. As a leading artistic practitioner, Lu Qingyin's understanding and control of music had already reached an extraordinary level. Just like at this moment, the lyrics, the music, the mood, and the singing were completely integrated. It was like a kind of passionate and surging sound, echoing in the hall, surging and shocking everyone's mind. Even some big shots with profound cultivation and a rock-solid mind couldn't help but be moved at this time, and their eyes were full of splendor. Chapter 430. Originally, all the people present were cultivators. No matter young or old, their state of mind was tough and could not be easily affected. But this song composed by Lu Qinyin was too special. In terms of temperament, she had already achieved the wonderful sound blossoming. The rhythm was majestic and extremely rare. It should be known that in ancient times, there was a powerful man who entered the Tao with sound. A shout could crush mountains and rivers and break stars. It could be seen that the mystery of the Tao of music was by no means ordinary. What's more, the musicians who came with Lu Qinyin were all masters who had been immersed in the Tao of music for many years, and the musical instruments they used were all extraordinary. Under their joint performance, this piece of music was so heart-stirring that it shocked everyone present and caused them to be immersed in it to the point of being unable to extricate themselves. In the hall, the music was passionate. Lu Qingyin's eyebrows were faintly flying. Her red lips were slightly opened, and her beautiful voice was like the sound of nature. Her voice was unique and majestic, just like a beautiful jade mouth spitting out the sound of heaven. The river flows out, and the ocean flows out. The hidden dragon leaps into the abyss, and the scales and claws fly. The baby tiger roars in the valley, and all the beasts are frightened. The eagle tests its wings, and the wind and dust are blowing. The strange flower is born, and the flower is magnificent. The sky wears the sky, and the earth wears the yellow. Even if there are thousands of years, there are 8 wilderness. The future is like the sea, and the future is long. The words were like the surging wind and thunder, and the resonance of mountains and rivers made people in the hall feel that on the bloody battlefield, thousands of imperial soldiers bathed in the morning sun, stepped on the corpses of the enemies, and sang triumphantly. They seemed to see that the brilliant empire was full of vitality, just like a young man who was reborn in the fire, was rising strongly, stepping forward, and making all the enemies tremble. The burning emotions and the music that stirred one's mind made everyone excited, longing, and sighing. Lin Sun was also deeply affected. For the first time, he felt the shock of the Tao of music. His state of mind was like burning blood, producing a strong resonance. This melody was grand and majestic and boundless. The lyrics and music were flawless and complemented each other perfectly. Suddenly, the tune stopped abruptly. In an instant, a lingering sound curled up in the hall, and only silence remained. Everyone present in the hall felt as if the emotions in their hearts had been fiercely suppressed, and they felt as if they were on the verge of erupting, yet were unable to vent it. At this time, Lu Qingyin's clear eyes were bright, and her whole body was filled with an indescribable momentum. She sang the last 2 lines of the music from her lips. Beautiful! My young empire will never grow old. The youth of my empire is boundless with the country. These 2 sentences were like a clap of thunder that knocked on the door of their hearts, causing the suppressed emotions in the hearts of everyone present to completely erupt. Like a flood bursting through a dam, it poured into the vast ocean. It was like an erupting volcano pouring over the mountains and rivers. Everyone felt their souls tremble while their hearts shook, and they were unable to control themselves. These last 2 lines were simply like the finishing touch, and it caused the complete piece of music to rise once more to attain a state where it resonated with the heavens and the earth and resonated with all living beings. As the song came to an end, The lingering sound lingered in the air. Everyone was still in a trance, and their chests were heaving up and down. Some young people even gasped and trembled all over. This was Lu Qingyin's new song. With a kind of rhythm, it resounded through the central imperial palace and performed an amazing chanting. This song should only be heard in heaven. How many times can it be heard in the human world? After a long time, an old man sighed with emotion, and it immediately aroused many people's resonance. They all applauded and praised. Indeed, this new song, whether in terms of melody or lyrics, was amazing. Coupled with Lu Qingyin's heavenly voice that went straight to the soul, the shock it showed had reached an unprecedented level. Otherwise, it was impossible for all the great figures and geniuses of the younger generation present here to be shocked to such an extent. For a time, everyone's eyes on Lu Qinyin changed. They became more appreciative and respectful, and even passionate and obsessed. Who wouldn't admire such a beautiful and talented woman? Even Lin Sun was filled with emotion. Her skills are close to the Tao, and her lyrics and music are excellent. It's really rare. Come, give her a seat. On the throne, the Empress praised. When Lu Qinyin sat down, the Empress asked again, "Does this song have a name?" Lu Qinyin said respectfully, "Please give it a name, Your Highness." The Empress thought for a moment and said, "My Xiao Empire has stood up to this day. I don't know how many talents have been born. They have fought on the battlefield to defend the territory of my empire and made indelible contributions to the empire. Now, when my empire is on the rise, in my opinion, all the young people of the empire should have the heart to serve the country, so that they can be called the pride of the empire. In this case, how about calling the song Talent's Song?" As soon as the voice fell, a big shot clapped his hands and praised, "Wonderful! There are countless young talents in the magnificent empire, just like the atmosphere of our empire today. Young people are full of vigor, never old with the sky, and boundless with the country. It's appropriate to name this song with the word talent." Suddenly, other big shots in the hall also praised it. Perhaps it was a bit of flattery, but when Lin Sun heard the name Talent's Song, he also felt it was very suitable. "Thank you for the name, Your Highness." Lu Qinyin expressed her gratitude. She was also very satisfied with the song. The word talent was so dazzling that it was completely worthy of the song she composed. I don't know how Miss Qinyin came up with the idea of composing such a majestic and passionate song. Even the words are magnificent. It's really amazing. Someone asked with a smile. Lu Qinyin said casually, "To tell you the truth, I composed this song on a whim. But the words were not written by me, but by Master Su Sanshi." Speaking of this, Lu Qinyin seemed to think of something and said with a smile, "The reason why I could compose this song so smoothly is related to child Lin Sun." Everyone was stunned. Why did this matter have something to do with Lin Sun? Lin Sun was also surprised. He immediately remembered that before entering the central imperial palace, Lu Qinyin had said that thanks to him, there was a talent song. But Lin Sun couldn't remember when he had helped Lu Qinyin. "What's going on?" Someone couldn't help asking. At that time, I invited Mr. Su Sanshi to write a song, but he couldn't start for a long time, so he was quite depressed. Later, when Mr. Su and I met in the Soaring Clouds Pavilion, I suddenly heard that child Lin's deeds were spread everywhere in the city. They all praised him as a talent, so Mr. Su was so touched that he wrote this song on the spot. Hearing Lu Qingyin's story, everyone couldn't help but look strange. How could this work? Wasn't it too much of a coincidence? But sometimes things were like this, especially for those who wrote lyrics and music. When inspiration was exhausted, they scratched their ears and cheeks and racked their brains, but they couldn't write anything. But when inspiration came, an inadvertent trifle could bring inspiration like a spring. Obviously, the words of the talent song were born under such circumstances. Although everyone understood this, when they thought that such a magnificent song was written because of Lin Sun, they felt a little complicated. This meant that no one dared to refute that the talent song was specially composed for Lin Sun. But could Lin Sun deserve such a great honor? This made many young men of aristocratic families feel very uncomfortable. When Lin Sun learned all this, He couldn't help but be a little stunned and didn't know whether to laugh or cry. It was really too coincidental. At this point, Lu Qingyin's performance was over. The birthday banquet continued. Some people toasted the emperor and the queen, and some specially arranged song and dance performances. The atmosphere became quite lively. Lin Sun, on the other hand, sat there alone, tasting the cup of dragon and phoenix bringing auspicious spirit tea. As the lavender and mellow tea entered his throat, the fragrance spread from his taste buds and turned into a stream of abundant warmth flowing into his body. In a flash, Lin Sun felt that his cultivation, which had been stuck in a bottleneck for a long time, was vaguely ready to move at this time. Good tea. Lin Sun's eyes flashed with a touch of brilliance. As early as before he entered Green Deer School to teach, his cultivation stagnated at the mastery of the middle stage of Sea Spirit Realm and encountered the barrier of breaking through the realm. Originally, he thought that it would take some tempering and opportunities to pry open the barrier of cultivation and smoothly break through. Who would have thought that just drinking tea at this time could produce such a wonderful effect, which really gave Lin Sun a pleasant surprise. Lin Sun couldn't help glancing around at other people, but found that it seemed that no one's breath changed when drinking dragon and phoenix, bringing prosperity, except himself. After thinking for a moment, Lin Sun roughly understood that his cultivation had already accumulated to an extreme level, and he only needed to poke through a layer of window paper to break through. Drinking this tea might have a great effect, but at best, it only provided him with a chance to break through the window paper. Thinking of this, Lin Sun drank up the tea in the cup, and then, without hesitation, began to adjust his breath and observe himself. He even ignored the lively birthday banquet in the hall. Once he missed such an opportunity to pry open the barrier of cultivation, he didn't know when he would encounter it again. Not long after, the voice of Steward Peng suddenly sounded in the hall. In order to encourage the outstanding talents of the young generation to concentrate on cultivation and cultivate more talents for the empire, Her Highness specially took out some treasures as reward for the birthday banquet of Her Highness Emperor. As soon as these words came out, the atmosphere became silent. Song Yi, Qi Songfeng by Ling Shi, Yun Fuqin, Yu Qi Zhe, and other talents of the young generation were all excited and their eyes lit up. It finally came. They had been waiting for this moment for a long time. However, if you want to get the reward, it depends on your ability. With that, Steward Peng strode forward, glanced at the people in the hall with his old eyes, and said, "Now, if anyone is interested in the reward, you can stand up and challenge the opponent you want to fight with most. As long as you win, you can get the reward." Chapter 431. Before they came to the Emperor's birthday banquet, there was a piece of news. It was said that there would be powerful people from the ancient Desolation Realm coming to the birthday banquet. If one was recognized by them, there was a high chance that they would be brought to the ancient Desolation Realm to cultivate. Ancient Desolation Realm. Many cultivators in the world had never heard of this name. But to those disciples from prestigious clans, they were very clearly aware that it was a vast world that was filled with sects and sects like trees in a forest, and it was peerlessly beautiful and possessed cultivation resources that exceeded their imagination. If one could enter it to cultivate, it would be like a fish leaping through the dragon gate. As a result, many famous geniuses had come. Ling Tianhou, Yu Qi Zhe, Song Yi, Qi Songfeng by Ling Shi, Yun Fuqin. What attracted them was the opportunity related to the ancient Desolation Realm. Earlier, the Empress had left the throne and said that she was going to receive a few friends. This made everyone guess that the friends that the Empress would personally receive must be powerful people from the ancient Desolation Realm. This was why when Chief Steward Peng announced that the Empress was going to take out rewards for the geniuses of the younger generation, it attracted so much attention. This was because it was too easy to guess. The so-called rewards were obviously for the geniuses of the younger generation to perform well. As long as they performed well enough, not only would they receive rewards from the Empress, but they could also receive the favor of the ancient Desolation Realm. This was the most attractive part. All of a sudden, the geniuses of the younger generation were filled with fighting spirit, and their faces were filled with eagerness to give it a try. Everyone must have guessed the meaning of this duel, but I still have to remind everyone. Chief Steward Peng's voice echoed across the palace. When you duel, your performance will be seen by the Empress and the others. At this point, Chief Steward Peng's expression became serious, and he said, "This is a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. Don't miss it. Everyone, please follow me." With that, he walked out of the palace. Immediately, all the guests stood up and followed him out in a single file. A giant arena had been built on the square outside the palace. There was a terrifying spirit formation around it, so there was no need to worry about it being broken. Those great figures were shocked in their hearts when they saw this. Obviously, the meaning of the battle held during the Emperor's banquet this time wasn't simple indeed. Otherwise, how could they have opened up a martial arts arena in front of the Central Imperial Palace? Looks like the rumor is true. The expert from the ancient Desolation territory has obviously come to the Empress' birthday banquet with the intention of selecting disciples. If he takes a liking to him, it'll be equivalent to obtaining a great opportunity. Many important figures had already guessed something, and their gazes changed slightly. They began to remind their own disciples to firmly grasp this opportunity. As long as they were chosen to cultivate in the ancient Desolation territory, it would bring unimaginable benefits to the families and forces behind them. These nobles wanted to know the ins and outs of the ancient Desolation territory. It was not just a cultivation holy land. Some of the horrifying orthodoxies could even exert a great influence on Ziyao Empire. Under such circumstances, if a disciple of an aristocratic family was chosen to go to the ancient Desolation realm to cultivate, the aristocratic family that the disciple belonged to would definitely be taken care of and valued by the empire. This was the most tempting point for those nobles. It could be said that the significance of this battle had indeed become different. Those young talents wanted to go to the ancient Desolation territory to cultivate. On the other hand, the nobles and nobles were thinking about how much benefit their children could bring to their clans if they could catch the eye of someone. For Lin Sun, his thinking was very simple. He didn't even want to participate in it. There was no way. Even if he was chosen, he couldn't leave now, because he still had to stay in heart-cleansing Peak and shoulder the heavy burden of the rise of Lin family. How could he just leave everything behind? The only thing that Lin Sun was concerned about was that if he could learn some clues about the heaven-reaching sword sect from those experts who came from the ancient Desolation territory, he would be satisfied. "Will you participate in it later?" Lu Qingyan came over and asked softly. "Let's see the situation first," Lin Sun said in a low voice. This time, there were many famous talents gathered in the field. He also wanted to see how powerful these so-called talents were, and then he would consider whether to participate in it or not. "Anyway, I still believe that you can seize this opportunity." Lu Qingyan smiled slightly. It was naturally a happy thing to be valued so much by a beauty, especially Lu Qingyan, who was an extremely outstanding beauty with temperament, which made people even happier. Lin Sun was no exception. He even felt a little ashamed of himself. "Lin Sun." Suddenly, a voice full of indifference and arrogance sounded. Not far away, Qi Songfeng, who wore a golden feather-high crown and had a fierce look between his eyebrows, was looking at Lin Sun coldly. "Get ready, I'll be the first to kill you." Qi Songfeng's voice was cold. His whole person was like a sharp sword, looking extremely cold and ruthless. After that, he turned his head and left. Lin Sun frowned immediately. He didn't seek revenge from this guy, but this guy took the initiative to come to him. He was really arrogant. Do you have a grudge against him? Lu Qingyan was stunned. There was a touch of worry in her clear eyes. Qi Songfeng was a freak. He had the bloodline of purple sea golden lotus. He was only 14 or 15 years old, but he was already famous in the Forbidden City. His cultivation and fighting capacity were abnormal. The best proof of his strength was his second place in this year's nation test. Yes, when I first came to the Forbidden City, he wanted to kill me, but he failed. I didn't expect that he dared to come to me again. Lin Sun explained casually and immediately asked, "Can I kill people in this duel?" Lu Qingyan was stunned and shook her head. "Certainly not. This is the birthday banquet of the current empress. How can we allow people to die?" Lin Sun immediately laughed. So, the boy was bragging when he said he wanted to kill me just now. Bragging seemed very vulgar, which made Lu Qingyan, a very cultivated beauty, blush. She stared at Lin Sun with a pair of clear eyes and said, "Don't take it lightly. If he really intends to challenge you, even if he doesn't kill you, he will inevitably be seriously injured." Lin Sun nodded with a smile. In fact, Lu Qingyan didn't know that when he heard that he couldn't kill people, he was very disappointed. If possible, he really didn't mind killing Qi Songfeng in this palace. Lin Sun. Suddenly, another feminine voice sounded. It was Ling Tianho, Zhao Jingyin, who was extremely handsome and enchanting in a bloody robe. "Do you dare to fight with me later?" Ling Tianho's eyes were aggressive. "If I win, you'll serve me for 10 years and give Lu Qingyan to me. What do you think?" "You?" Lu Qingyan didn't expect that Ling Tianho would use her as a bet. Her pretty face suddenly became cold, and her clear eyes were full of anger. This was too much. Not only Lu Qingyan, but also some practitioners nearby couldn't help but gasp when they heard this. They thought that Ling Tianho was too bold. His arrogance was more than arrogance. He was simply lawless. However, those who knew Ling Tianho knew that this was his character. He was fierce, unreasonable, and unscrupulous. The reason why he was expelled from the Forbidden City was that he killed more than a dozen people in order to fight for an art practitioner, which aroused public anger. "Miss Qingyan, don't lower yourself to this idiot's level." Lin Sun was even stronger than Ling Tianho. He said indifferently, "You want to fight with me? That's fine, but we have to change the stakes." Being called an idiot, Ling Tianho was not angry at all. Instead, he revealed a feminine and enchanting smile and said, "Oh, tell me. It's very simple. If I win, you kneel down and apologize to Miss Qingyan and swear that you won't retaliate." Lin Sun said without hesitation. Not only did Lin Sun call Ling Tianho an idiot, but he also wanted Ling Tianho to kneel down and apologize. This Lin Sun was really bold. However, his behavior won the favor of many women present. Look, in order to avenge Lu Qingyan, he dared to challenge Ling Tianho directly. This was a real man. Lu Qingyan's heart was also touched. Her clear eyes stared at Lin Sun as if this was the first time she had seen this handsome youth. She couldn't help but worry. How could he be so stupid to confront someone like Ling Tianho just to avenge her? It was not worth it. Okay. Ling Tianho's eyes were filled with blood-colored lightning, but he didn't hesitate to agree as if he wasn't worried that he would lose. Then he asked, "What if you lose?" Lin Sun casually said, "It's also very simple. Don't you want me to work for you for 10 years? As long as you win, I promise you." Everyone nearby was shocked. This bet was too big. Who didn't know that Lin Sun was a young spiritual tattoo master who caused the 9 dragons roar? And not long ago, he had just helped the Empress repair the Apocalypse Sword. Such terrifying attainments in spiritual tattoos made most of the senior spiritual tattoo masters in the Forbidden City pale in comparison. It was easy to imagine that if Lin Sun lost, it would be a big bargain for Ling Tianho. Lin Sun. Lu Qingyan was anxious and couldn't help but speak. "Listen to me, it's okay." Lin Sun smiled brightly. Okay." At this moment, Ling Tianho also smiled as if he was very satisfied and said, "Unfortunately, your courage is still too small. The bet you proposed is not very satisfying. If it was me, I would have used my life to make the bet. That would be a real bet. In my opinion, your life is too cheap and worthless, so I don't want to gamble. It's like a broken jar colliding with a fine porcelain. How can there be such a good thing in this world?" Lin Sun said with a smile. Chapter 432. Life was too cheap. He even compared the broken pot to Ling Tianho. When hearing these words, many people opened their eyes wide. Lin Sun looked very gentle and harmless, but they didn't expect that he could be so ruthless when he scolded people. Ling Tianho was well known in the Forbidden City for being domineering and fierce. He was one of the best in the younger generation, but Lin Sun didn't care about it at all. He always fought back strongly, which was too bold. Some noble girl's beautiful eyes were full of splendor. This was a young man who dared to teach a royal son a lesson. He was really as tyrannical as the rumors said. His arrogant attitude made them feel novel and excited. Sharp-tongued. What a joke. I like to see what you have to say when you lose. Ling Tianho smiled grimly, and there was a touch of coldness between his eyebrows. Being repeatedly insulted by Lin Sun made him really angry. If he didn't want Lin Sun to work for him, he wouldn't have been so patient. After that, he turned around and left. Seeing this, Lin Sun just smiled and didn't take it seriously. This made Lu Qingyan worried and moved. She didn't agree with Lin Sun's behavior, but at this time, Lin Sun stood up for her. She didn't know what to say. This guy, isn't he afraid of retaliation? Nearby, a young girl asked in a low voice with a blushing face. She felt that what happened just now was too exciting. Haha, you're wrong about Lin Sun. Since he entered the Forbidden City, he has done many outrageous things. But he hasn't been living well yet. Just now in the Central Imperial Palace, he even received a reward from the Empress. Now he dares to be so arrogant. Obviously, he has something to rely on. Another girl clenched her fist with her beautiful eyes. Obviously, she knew Lin Sun's past very well. Qi Songfeng issued a challenge first, and then Lin Sun made a strong bet with Ling Tianho. What happened to Lin Sun soon spread all over the place. Look, this is retribution. This guy is too arrogant these days. Finally, someone can't stand it anymore. Some people gloated. Indeed, just now in the Central Imperial Palace, the Empress rewarded him. Even the talent song composed by Miss Lu Qingyan is related to him. Many people have been unhappy with him for a long time. Some of them spoke with jealousy and jealousy. In the noisy atmosphere, Lin was wondering why manager Peng didn't announce the start of the duel until now. He looked into the distance and saw steward Peng standing at the side of the martial arts practice field, as if he was waiting for some orders. Lin. Suddenly, another voice resounded. Songzhi walked over complacently and said, "Listen up. When the battle begins, my cousin brother Song, he will fight you. Don't be a coward." All the people nearby were in an uproar. Even Song, he disliked Lin Sun. This was too shocking. There were Qi Songfeng and Ling Tianho before him. Now Song Yi, who ranked first in this year's nation test, was going to fight with Lin Sun. It could be seen how many forces Lin Sun had angered these days. This guy was really unlucky. It was hard for him not to make a fool of himself now. Many people snickered in their hearts, waiting to watch a good show. Don't look at me like that. It seems that I've done something infuriating. Lin Sun ignored Songzhi and looked at Lu Qingyan next to him with a wry smile. The latter was looking at him with worry and surprise. Hey, why don't you know how to restrain yourself? Lu Qingyan sighed faintly. I can't help it, Lin Sun said casually. Lu Qingyan was shocked by this simple sentence. Can't help it. It seemed to be a simple sentence, but it made Lu Qingyan inexplicably distressed. Indeed, thinking of Lin Sun's situation since he entered the Forbidden City and the embarrassing and dangerous situation he faced, one could know how difficult it was for him. Outsiders only saw that he made big moves from time to time and became famous and in the limelight. No one knew what kind of dangers and hardships he had experienced behind the scenes. Lin Sun, you've gone too far. I'm talking to you, but you ignore me. What do you mean? Song just shouted angrily. Lin Sun glanced at him and immediately laughed, saying, I was wondering who it was. It turns out to be the green hat child. I dare not talk to you too much. If I'm also misunderstood by others, it will be too unjust. Everyone looked strange. Lin Sun's words were really mean. You what? Song, he wants to fight with me. Not you. Why are you in such a hurry? Lin Sun rolled his eyes. People nearby looked at each other. Although they already knew that Lin Sun was arrogant, they didn't expect that he was so arrogant. You wait and see. Songzhi's face turned livid. He gritted his teeth and left after saying a harsh word. You don't even have the courage to challenge me. You deserve to be cuckolded for the rest of your life. Lin Sun's light words made Songzhi, who had just left, tremble all over and almost go berserk. This guy deserved to be killed. Lin Sun, Lu Qingyan couldn't help saying. Lin Sun directly changed the topic and said with a smile, Miss Qing Yin, you care so much about me. If those childs who call themselves flower protectors hate me out of jealousy, I'm afraid they will jump out to fight with me again. Lu Qingyin spat and said angrily, Don't you worry about yourself at all? While speaking, she was really a little worried about the situation Lin Sun said would happen. She knew very well how bad the morals of those childs were. It's no use worrying. We won't know until we fight. Lin Sun shrugged with a smile. At this time, Steward Peng in the distance no longer remained silent. He suddenly said, Everyone, the duel can start now. Those who want to get the reward of Her Majesty can stand out now. His voice rumbled through the field. In an instant, all the voices in the field were suppressed. Lin Sun, get out. Lin Sun, come on. Lin Sun, do you dare to fight with me? As soon as Steward Peng's voice fell, 3 different voices sounded in the field. They all called out Lin Sun's name at the same time. They were Qi Songfeng, Ling Tianho, and Song Yi. Even though they had known that Lin Sun was going to be unlucky, no one expected that the scene would be so explosive. Qi Songfeng, Ling Tianho, and Song Yi were all peerless figures in the Forbidden City. But now, they called out Lin Sun's name and wanted to fight with him, which was too amazing. Ha! This guy's become a rat on the street. Everyone wants to beat him. It's so satisfying. It's normal. You can see how many forces he has offended since he entered the Forbidden City, but he doesn't know how to restrain himself. He deserves to be targeted by others. I have a hunch that Lin Sun is destined to be disgraced and become a joke in today's duel. Alas, I admire Lin Sun a little. He's really good at making trouble. I've never seen a person as unscrupulous as him. It's really surprising that he can still live up to now. Well, I really admire Lin Sun. There was an uproar in the field. Most of them were gloating and rubbing their hands to see how Lin Sun would deal with it. Even those bigwigs couldn't help but chuckle. Lin Sun was really unpopular among the young people. Obviously, Manager Peng didn't expect that such a thing would happen. 3 young talents stood out and challenged Lin Sun at the first time. After a pause, he asked Lin Sun, Who are you willing to accept the challenge? Or will you refuse all of them? Swish! All of a sudden, all eyes fell on Lin Sun. Some people couldn't help laughing. Come on, Lin Sun, weren't you very arrogant before? This is a rare opportunity to show off. I don't think he dares. You can't say that. Lin Sun is very good at spiritual tattoos. Young men like Hua Wuyo, Hua Wuhan, Song Zhe, and Song Chonga, who had conflicts with Lin Sun, all laughed at him. Seeing this, Lu Qingyan couldn't help but get angry. She didn't expect these noble young men to be so mean in the past. She was about to persuade Lin Sun not to get angry, but Lin Sun had already flashed and landed lightly on the Central Martial Arts practice field. Suddenly, all the people present stopped laughing. Many people looked surprised. They didn't expect that Lin Sun would take the lead to enter the martial arts practice field without hesitation. Before I accept the challenge, I have something to say. Under the attention of thousands of people, Lin Sun said indifferently. His black eyes were deep and calm. He stood there like a spear. Everyone was curious about what he was going to say. The field became silent for a while. Lin Sun glanced around and soon fixed his eyes on some old acquaintances. Immediately, he smiled and said, Today, many people are waiting to see me make a fool of myself. They are either defeated by me, despicable people who hate me, or enemies who hate me. But in my heart, these people have a common name, trash. Lin Sun seemed to be smiling, but what he said was very rude, which made many people in the field change their faces with surprise and anger. This boy was too arrogant. In front of the Central Imperial Palace, in front of a group of imperial dignitaries, he was so unscrupulous. He deserved to be killed. Trash is trash. You don't even have the courage to challenge me. You can only rely on others to fight with me to save some self-esteem. Isn't this trash? Lin Sun's words became more and more rude, which made all the dignitaries present frown. This was the forbidden area of the Imperial Palace. How could he say such words? Lin Sun, watch your words. Steward Peng reminded him in a low voice. Lin Sun smiled apologetically and said, One last sentence. I will accept the challenge after that. Everyone was speechless for a while. What kind of person was he? He didn't know when to stop. Lin Sun took a deep breath and looked around. A smile appeared on his handsome face, and his eyes were firm. He said word by word, "But please rest assured, I won't let you trash down. P.S. Some people complained that the update time was too late." Goldfish also deeply reflected on it and decided to update as early as possible from tomorrow onwards so that everyone could read at night without affecting their sleep. Chapter 433. Listening to Lin Sun's scolding, the faces of the younger generation, such as Hua Wuyo and Hua Wuhan, became extremely gloomy. This man deserved to be killed. There were also some who admired Lin Sun's courage. Like an innocent girl, Lin Sun was too arrogant and gave them a fresh sense of stimulation. Only Lu Qingyan smiled bitterly to herself. Lin Sun had completely offended those people this time. "Lin Sun, please make a choice." Steward Peng reminded Lin Sun in a deep voice with an indisputable tone. This was a duel that had attracted the attention of the Empress and several overlords from the ancient wilderness territory. Moreover, it was held in front of the central imperial palace. If it was spread out, how would the dignity of the royal family be regarded by the world? "Qi Sangfeng, did you just say you want me to die? Come on, I'd like to see if you have the ability to do it today." Lin Sun chuckled, but his black eyes were like lightning, coldly staring at Qi Sangfeng in the distance. In an instant, his momentum suddenly changed. It was like a big abyss running, with a kind of momentum that could swallow the sky, which was extremely powerful. "Umph!" Qi Sangfeng's face darkened. With a swish, his figure flashed in the void and appeared on the martial arts field. "Lin Sun, have you forgotten the bet with me?" Seeing this, Ling Tianho's face darkened and he shouted. He thought that Lin Sun was afraid to fight with him, so he chose Qi Sangfeng as his opponent. "Don't worry, it's not too late to deal with you after I get rid of Qi Sangfeng." Lin Sun's body was covered with a light cyan glow. His long black hair was flying in the air, and his momentum became more and more powerful. There was a sudden uproar in the field. Lin Sun was so reckless that he even wanted to fight with Ling Tianho. Obviously, he thought that Qi Sangfeng was not his opponent at all. This guy made a lot of trouble today. Does he also want to attract the attention of those overlords from the mysterious territory? Bai Lingshi raised her eyebrows as if she was thinking about it. Lu Qingyan was stunned, and her clear eyes flashed with extraordinary splendor. It was the first time for her to see such a domineering side of Lin Sun. His arrogant look and posture that looked at the world with a smile were so different from the past. "Hey, then I'll wait. Remember, if you lose, the bet still exists. Don't try to cheat." Ling Tianho sneered. Lin ignored him and looked at Qi Sangfeng on the opposite side. The youth with the violet sea golden lotus bloodline had an incomparably cold expression on his face, and his eyes were filled with anger. It was obvious that he was angered by Lin Sun's words. He still wanted to fight Ling Tianho. He was obviously looking down on him. "Lin Sun, as long as there is a chance to kill you, I will not show any mercy." Qi Sangfeng's voice was cold and arrogant with endless chill. "Oh, it's just bragging. If I can't do it, it'll be too embarrassing." Lin Sun smiled lightly. "Die." Qi Sangfeng no longer hesitated. With a bang, a ball of bright light bloomed. It was a sword. It made a whining sound, breaking the void and chopping at Lin Sun. The aura was incomparably sharp, and it was so terrifying that even the martial arts practice field, which had been set up with a spirit array, was trembling slightly. Many people were greatly alarmed. Their hearts palpitated and their bodies shivered. Spirit treasure? Lin Sun narrowed his eyes. This was a spirit sword that was dazzling like the sun and moon, and it emitted a terrifying pressure. Its fluctuations were vast like an ocean, and it was peerlessly sharp. Whoosh! The sword light was as fast as a rainbow, but Lin Sun was even faster. His figure flashed, and there seemed to be a shadow of an ice dragon emerging behind him. In a twinkling of an eye, Lin Sun disappeared. Ice dragon steps. With a loud bang, the place where Lin Sun originally stood trembled, and the sword light burst. It could be imagined that if he dodged a little slower, he would be killed. Green Sun, spiritual sword. There was an exclamation in the field. Finally, people saw clearly what Qi Songfeng used. The whole body of this sword was green and covered with all kinds of mysterious patterns. It emitted endless divine light, as dazzling as the sun in the sky. It was powerful and horrible. Its name was Green Sunday. It was the ancestral spirit treasure of Qi family. It had the power of upper grade of earth rank. It had killed many overmatches and was stained with blood. Its power was even comparable to a heaven-ranked spiritual weapon. Boom! Qi Songfeng's figure flickered. He controlled Green Sun's spiritual sword and attacked again. Purple light surged around him. He was like a young sword god, full of pride. Whoosh! 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 Lin Sun's figure galloped, and the shadow of the ice dragon appeared. In a moment, there were many shadows in the martial arts practice field. His speed was too fast. The unpredictable steps seemed to contain the mystery of the Great Way. It came and went unexpectedly, avoiding Qi Songfeng's sword strikes again and again. What kind of steps is this? Many people were shocked. Looking from a distance, it seemed that Lin Sun was not a person, but an ice dragon. He flickered in the clouds and moved in the dust. Sometimes he turned into smoke, and sometimes he moved like lightning. Qi Songfeng's sword Qi was so fierce, but Lin Sun avoided it easily, which was incredible. Even Hua Wuyo, who had fought with Lin Sun before, couldn't help but be stunned. She clearly remembered that Lin Sun had never used such wonderful steps at that time. Let's see how long you can hide. Suddenly, Qi Songfeng roared. The Green Sun's spiritual sword, like a tide, set off sword shadows all over the sky, covering the whole world. In an instant, everyone knew that Lin Sun couldn't avoid it. This sword was too terrible. It covered the whole world. Unless Lin Sun withdrew from the martial arts practice field, he was doomed to fight hard. Bang! Lin Sun took a step in the void, and the shadow of the ice dragon behind him suddenly rushed out. It raised its head and vibrated like a dragon's roar. The sword shadows all over the sky suddenly collapsed, and Lin Sun had taken this opportunity to get out of the predicament safely. Many people couldn't help rubbing their eyes. They couldn't believe all this. They never thought that Lin Sun's unpredictable steps could have the power of attack. This was the power of the ice dragon steps. When it was practiced to the mastery level, once it was used, there would be an ice dragon under his feet. He could fly up to the sky and enter the earth, patrolling all directions with peerless power. You can only dodge. What coward! Qi Songfeng couldn't kill Lin Sun for a while, so his face became colder and colder. He shouted, and the momentum around him was surging straight to the sky. His whole body was like an unparalleled sword. For a while in the martial arts practice field, the sword Qi crisscrossed and shot out dazzling green lights. Lin Sun dodged and moved among the sword Qi, like a rainbow, lightning, flying light, and light smoke. He was indescribably ethereal and calm. Such a battle seemed very strange. From the beginning to the end, Lin Sun never fought back. He just dodged, which made the situation intertwined. Lin Sun is really despicable. He doesn't dare to confront face to face. Many young people were dissatisfied and thought Lin Sun was as timid as a mouse. This step is really mysterious. Why have I never heard of it? There were also some experienced people who saw the clues and realized the power of the ice dragon steps. They were secretly surprised. I didn't expect that Lin Sun really has some skills, although he is arrogant. But his fighting style is too conservative, which makes people despise him. Is he looking for a chance to fight back? Fight back? I'm afraid it's very difficult. Qi Songfeng hasn't used his real trump card. As long as he seizes the opportunity, Lin Sun is doomed to be defeated. Many people were speculating. At this moment, everyone was paying attention to the battlefield. Humph! Suddenly, there was a touch of evil spirit between Qi Songfeng's eyebrows. The purple air all over his body was faintly filled with bright golden light. At the same time, his aura had also risen to a terrifying level. Lin Sun, let's see how you block this time. With a loud shout, the Green Sun's spiritual sword was chopped out. In an instant, It was like a cyan sun emerging, illuminating the world and crushing the void. The power was so terrible that it caused an uproar in the audience. How Ian soared. The secret method of Chi family. Almost at the same time, Lin Sun in the distance stopped, and a cold luster flashed in his black eyes. Is this your real power? Boom. At this moment, Lin Sun didn't dodge anymore. He suddenly clenched his fists, and his momentum soared. He strode across the void and took the initiative to fight with Qi Songfeng. As he punched, the wind was surging, as if it was about to split the holy mountain and the blue sea. How dare he fight with Lin Sun, or with his bare hands? The audience was shocked. They couldn't believe their eyes. They thought that Lin Sun's move was obviously courting death. The sound of collision resounded, and the cyan, sun-like sword light flickered, forming all sorts of mysterious patterns that flickered incessantly. On the other side, Lin Sun's body shook violently, and his body was flowing with divine light. Finally, he was shaken back and fell to the ground. When he fell to the ground, the earth trembled. Unexpectedly, Lin Sun was not killed or even seriously injured. Only the blood on the corner of his mouth made him look a little embarrassed. Everyone gasped. This guy was so fierce that he could block the suppression of Qi family's secret method, How Ian soared, with only his body. Many people couldn't believe it and were dumbfounded. This power is good, but it's not enough to kill me. Lin Sun took a deep breath, and his body flashed with spiritual light. He recovered quickly, and his momentum was as arrogant as before. This result shocked many people. It could be seen that in this head-on confrontation, Lin Sun had obviously gained the upper hand. Although he was suppressed in an embarrassed way, he didn't use any treasures and was not seriously injured. On the other hand, Qi Songfeng used the Green Sun sword as his weapon and the secret method, How Ian sword, but he couldn't defeat Lin Sun. Naturally, the superiority was obvious. How could he be so strong? I've underestimated his prowess before. When he fought with Hua Wuyo, his strength was definitely not as strong as it is now. Lin Sun's performance was beyond most people's expectation. Especially those young talents who looked down on Lin Sun before. They were all secretly surprised at this moment and realized that Lin Sun was extraordinary. Qi Songfeng, what other means do you have? Just use them. Otherwise, when I fight back, you will have no chance to use them. Lin Sun said indifferently, and his words had a kind of frightening momentum. After the previous observation and test, Lin Sun was completely sure that Qi Songfeng could not be his opponent at all unless he had some extraordinary means. Humph! Although Qi Songfeng's momentum was still fierce, he was a little surprised in his heart. Lin Sun's change was too great, which was also beyond his expectation. Chapter 434. Before Lin Sun stepped into the Forbidden City for the first time, he was still a Heaven Gang realm practitioner who couldn't even fly. He was like an ant on the ground that could be trampled and slaughtered at will. At that time, Qi Songfeng did think so and did so. Unfortunately, someone saved Lin Sun in time and made him fail to achieve his wish. However, in less than a year, Lin Sun, who was regarded as an ant by Qi Songfeng at the beginning, already had enough fighting power to fight against him. How could Qi Songfeng not be shocked? It had only been half a year. Who could imagine that Lin Sun had transformed to such a powerful level? In the past, Qi Songfeng had always regarded himself as a peerless genius and looked down upon the heroes in the world. He thought that when he rose to the top, the so-called talents among his peers were destined to be defeated by him and become his stepping stone. However, compared with Lin Sun in front of him, Qi Songfeng found that his talent, aptitude, and strength, which he was proud of, were obviously inferior. This was an unacceptable blow for Qi Songfeng. He was the most dazzling genius of Qi family. He was only 14 years old this year. He firmly believed that he could step into Tao Insight realm within 3 years. But now, Lin Sun, who was not as good as him in birth, status, and talent, caught up with him. Qi Songfeng almost couldn't believe it. Kill! Qi Songfeng shouted and ran the secret method. His whole body was steaming with purple and gold flame. The green sun's spiritual sword swallowed and spat. He performed the ancestral Hao-Ian sword to the extreme. In the field, round after round of sun-like sword light emerged with great power, shooting to the 9 heavens and 10 earths, which was very shocking. Rumble, the martial arts field roared like thunder, stirred up the wind and clouds, and tore the void. If it weren't for the defense of the magical spiritual formation, the martial arts field would have been destroyed long ago. Qi Tsangfeng and Lin Sun fought in the martial arts field. Sometimes they fought in the sky, and sometimes they swept across the field. Their sword intent was brilliant, and their fists were rolling, which changed the color of the world and produced all kinds of frightening phenomena. All the people in the field were shocked and dazzled. Qi Tsangfeng's performance was worthy of the achievement of the 2nd place in the nation test. He was dazzling and sharp. If there was no accident, he would be another influential figure in swordsmanship in the future. This was very normal. He had the bloodline of Purple Sea Golden Lotus, and his talent was beyond the ordinary people. Besides, he was carefully cultivated by the Qi family, which was one of the top aristocratic families. It was hard for him not to be outstanding. What surprised everyone was Lin Sun's performance. At the beginning of the battle, Lin Sun kept dodging. Many people thought that he was frightened by Qi Tsangfeng and didn't dare to fight head-on. But soon, they finally found that Lin Sun was not afraid of Qi Tsangfeng at all. He had been testing Qi Tsangfeng's trump card. Until now, Lin Sun fought head-on with Qi Tsangfeng with his bare hands. How could people not be shocked by this? These days, the Forbidden City was full of rumors that Lin Sun was a stunning spiritual tattoo master, which almost made people forget that he was also a genius in martial arts. The fact that he had defeated Hua Wuyo at the early stage of the spiritual C tier was enough to prove this point. Now, the peak duel between him and Qi Tsangfeng undoubtedly further proved Lin Sun's terrible foundation in martial arts. What a freak this guy is. Many big shots were shocked. They couldn't imagine that as a young spiritual tattoo master who could cause the strange phenomenon of 9 dragons, Lin Sun also had a transcendent talent in martial arts, which was incredible. It's strange. Don't you want to kill me? Why can't you do it until now? On the martial arts practice field, Lin Sun chuckled. His fists were like a dragon, stirring up all directions. He vividly performed the 9 strikes for shaking heaven. Lin Sun used ice dragon steps to cooperate with killing. He was full of arrogance. Don't be arrogant. If someone hadn't saved you at that time, would you still be alive? Qi Tsangfeng gritted his teeth. He was irritated by Lin Sun's sarcasm. His cold and arrogant face was full of coldness. Boom! Suddenly, his sword Qi was crushed. The green sun spiritual sword wailed and was almost out of control. This made Qi Tsangfeng's face suddenly change. Lin Sun's fighting capacity became stronger again. Didn't he use his full strength before? You still have the face to mention this? Haha, I'm not afraid to tell you that if that senior didn't intervene, do you think you can live to now? Lin Sun's momentum became more and more oppressive. His figure was like an ice dragon swimming in the air. He strode forward and approached Qi Tsangfeng. Lin Sun was angry when he didn't mention what happened at that time. At that time, he was intercepted by Qi Tsangfeng and almost suffered a disaster. What a joke. You were just an ant in Heaven Gang realm at that time. How dare you try to kill me? It's ridiculous. Qi Tsangfeng was furious. But no matter how hard he tried, he couldn't stop Lin Sun's approach at this moment. On the contrary, he was forced to retreat. At this moment, Lin Sun had indeed launched his suppression. Qi Tsangfeng was no longer a threat to Lin Sun. Boom! His whole body was surging with light, cyan divine light. His whole body was like a moving abyss, engulfing the sky and rushing forward constantly. Mountain splitting and sea shattering. Soul shattering and void refining collapse. Python dragon collapse. The superimposed power of the 9 strikes for shaking heaven and ice dragon steps made Lin Sun show his invincible power. He had the unstoppable spirit to push mountains and rivers. Suddenly, Qi Tsangfeng showed a tendency to retreat. His face was pale and he gasped for breath. He couldn't believe all this. The audience outside the field was even more restless and in an uproar. It was too outrageous that Lin Sun launched his suppression with a strong force. He was just at the middle stage of Sea Spirit Realm, and he was unarmed. How could he be so powerful? This guy, I thought he was immersed in spiritual tattoos these days. Who would have thought that he has never slacked on martial arts? Bai Lingshi's clear eyes were full of surprise. Qi Songfeng was very terrible. At the age of 14, he ranked second in the nation test, which was enough to prove his strength. But compared with Lin Sun, he was obviously inferior. How on earth did he cultivate? Many people couldn't believe it. They all remembered that when Lin Sun defeated Hua Wuyo, he was far less powerful than he was today. Body movements, punching skills, cultivation foundation, fighting means, all of them are top-notch in the world. This young man is really extraordinary. Some older bigwigs saw some clues from Lin Sun's martial power, and their expressions were complicated. The Lin clan, which had fallen into decline a long time ago, had actually produced such a stunning genius. This was something that no one had expected. Hao Qian Chop. Suddenly, Qi Songfeng, who was forced to a dead end in the martial arts field, let out a roar. His sword dived down at a high speed like a brilliant sun. Lin Sun's eyes burst with divine light. Almost at the same time, he took a deep breath. His palms and fingers were overflowing with light cyan light, and he smashed it hard. A devouring blast. Boom! An earth-shattering noise was heard, and the divine light splashed everywhere. The green sun's spiritual sword buzzed and was severely hit away. At the same time, Qi Songfeng was suppressed to the ground and coughed up blood. Lin Sun stepped on Qi Songfeng's body. Crack! The sound of bones breaking came out. Not to mention Qi Songfeng. Everyone present felt a pain in their ears. You're courting death. Qi Songfeng roared and struggled to get up to fight back. This was a kind of shame which made him mad. As a descendant of the Qi family and a famous young talent in the Forbidden City, he was stepped on by Lin Sun under the watchful eyes of the public. How could he face Lin Sun in the future? Aren't you going to kill me? Why are you so weak? Young man, it's shameful if you can't take back what you've boasted. A murderous intent flashed in Lin Sun's black eyes. He raised his hand to kill Qi Songfeng. But at this moment, an invisible force emerged. Lin Sun's body was moved away and fell more than 30 meters away before he could react. At the same time, Steward Peng, standing on one side of the martial arts field, waved his hand and took Qi Songfeng out of the field. Today is the birthday of Her Majesty. You can have a duel, but you can't kill anyone. Steward Peng reminded Lin Sun indifferently. Although Lin Sun was unwilling, he still said with a smile after thinking about it, "Thank you for reminding me." At this point, the first duel came to an end. Qi Songfeng was seriously injured. He was extremely ashamed and resentful. He was taken away by the clansmen of Qi family in a hurry. He was too ashamed to stay here any longer. Seeing this, everyone in the field couldn't help being shocked. They looked at Lin Sun in a different way. They couldn't imagine that Qi Songfeng would be defeated in the end. They also couldn't imagine that Lin Sun was so strong and abnormal that he suppressed Qi Songfeng at one stroke without using any treasure. It was really shocking. Didn't Lin Sun have any treasure? What a joke. He was a master of spiritual tattoos. He once helped the Empress repair the Sword of Apocalypse. How could he not have a suitable treasure? Then why didn't he use any treasure? The answer was very simple. He didn't take Qi Songfeng seriously at all and disdained to use any treasure. The defeat of Qi Songfeng undoubtedly proved this point. This guy is so strong. By the way, has he ever been engaged? Humph, give up early. This kind of person is not someone you could think about. Poor Qi Songfeng. He won the second place in the nation test, but he was beaten like this by Lin Sun, who didn't participate in the nation test. His reputation was ruined. Lin Sun was arrogant before, but he really has the ability. Many people were talking about it, and their attitude towards Lin Sun had obviously changed. People like Hua Wuyo, Hua Wuhan, and Song Zhe looked gloomy and gnashed their teeth with hatred. Even Qi Songfeng couldn't suppress Lin Sun, which was hard for them to believe. After this battle, the Empress and a master from the ancient Desolation territory must have seen this boy's performance. Many big shots had mixed feelings. Unexpectedly, Lin Sun didn't leave the martial arts field. He glanced around and looked at Ling Tianho in the distance. "It's your turn." Lin Sun's understatement was like a thunder, which made the whole field silent. Everyone was stunned. What did this guy say? Did they hear it wrong? Did he really want to continue the duel with Ling Tianho after defeating Qi Songfen? What was disdain? That was it. Not only was he arrogant, but he also dared to fulfill his promise. Not to mention anything else, this kind of courage was enough to make most people feel ashamed. P.S. Yesterday, we agreed to update as early as possible today, so the second update should be done before 9 p.m. Chapter 435. Ling Tianho was different from Qi Songfen. In other words, he became famous earlier than Qi Songfen, and his background was more terrifying. A few years ago, when he was expelled from the Forbidden City by the decree of the current emperor, Ling Tianho was already a dazzling talent. Because of his domineering and fierce temperament, he caused a lot of wrath and was sent to the frontier battlefield to atone for his crimes. Although he hadn't returned for 5 years, during these 5 years, there were often news about Ling Tianho in the Forbidden City. It was said that he had killed countless enemies on the battlefield and made great military achievements. Even the dark races were spreading his fierce name. Now, his return to the Forbidden City was a sensational event. Many people speculated that after 5 years on the battlefield, Ling Tianho's strength had already reached a terrifying level. Under such circumstances, Lin Sun still dared to challenge Ling Tianho. Who wouldn't be surprised? Before the birthday banquet began, Lin Sun confronted Ling Tianho on the White Jade Avenue. In order to prove who was more courageous, Lin Sun killed Ling Tianho's 3-headed black flood dragon on the spot. I just didn't expect that Lin Sun dared to provoke Ling Tianho like this. Someone whispered, "Does this guy think that Ling Tianho is easy to be provoked? Is he fearless or arrogant?" I heard that he has made a bet with Ling Tianho. He said that if Ling Tianho lost, he should kneel down and apologize to Miss Lu Qingyan. He is really ruthless. Ruthless? I think he's courting death. Everyone knows Ling Tianho's temper. He is famous for his fierceness. Lin Sun's action is no different from courting death. Everyone was talking about it. They all thought that Lin Sun didn't know when to stop. He had defeated Qi Songfen, but he didn't know when to stop. Instead, he continued to challenge Ling Tianho, which was obviously too arrogant. You don't know the immensity of heaven and earth. A cold shout exploded over the martial arts field like a cold wave. Ling Tianho's figure flashed and came to the martial arts field. He was wearing a blood-red robe. His slender and straight body stood there like a god. His handsome face was indifferent, and his blood-red eyes were filled with lightning. There was a kind of indescribable power in him. Remember your words. If you dare to go back on your word when you lose, no one in the world can save you. Ling Tianho's voice was soft and cold, causing one's heart to tremble. He did have the capital to say so. As a member of the royal family, his temperament was the most domineering and fierce. Otherwise, it was impossible for the current emperor to order him to be expelled from the Forbidden City, because when he did things, he was unbridled and didn't care about anything at all. This was undoubtedly the most terrifying aspect of him. Lin Sun also said seriously, "I just hope you don't forget to kneel down and apologize to Miss Qingyan when you lose. That will be enough." Everyone revealed looks of shock. This bet was actually real. Even some of the major figures hiding in the dark revealed looks of surprise. It was just a duel, yet the two of them had made such a bet. It was indeed shocking. No matter who lost, they were bound to pay an extremely heavy price. In contrast, Qi Songfeng was much luckier to be defeated by Lin Sun. Hee, you're getting bolder and bolder, but I like it. If I want to fight, I'll fight someone like you who dares to challenge me. That's what I want. Ling Tianho laughed wantonly. He waved his hand, and a golden halberd appeared in his hand. He directly chopped at Lin Sun. It was very simple and casual. It was as if he was going to behead Lin Sun like a chicken or a dog. This was a kind of conceit, but it was also a kind of fierce domineering. His blood-red eyes were cold, his blood-red robe fluttered, and a monstrous blood-red light rushed out. In a trance, everyone seemed to see a mountain of corpses and a sea of blood emerging from Ling Tianho's body. His killing intent was enough to shock ghosts and gods. Boom! The golden halberd swept across the sky, creating a loud explosion. It crushed the void and rushed toward Lin Sun. The terrifying killing intent seemed to want to drown Lin Sun. Many people held their breath and were horrified. It had only been 5 years since they last met, but Ling Tianho's momentum had become so terrifying. He was like a god of slaughter that came out of a sea of blood. Clang! Lin Sun's fist force collided with the golden halberd, creating an ear-piercing collision. It was like two mountains colliding, and it was earth-shattering. The terrifying wind raged, blowing sand and stones into the air, and the sky changed colors. Lin Sun was knocked back and staggered. On the other hand, Ling Tianho's momentum was like the sun in the sky. Everyone held their breath as they watched this battle. From this attack, they could tell that if Lin Sun didn't use his treasure, he wouldn't be able to hold on for long. Take out your weapon. Otherwise, I'll kill you like slaughtering a chicken. Ling Tianho was indifferent as he swept the golden halberd. His domineering aura filled the air as if he was the ruler of the world. Once he started fighting, he seemed to become a different person. His tyrannical aura caused the eyes of many noble girls to shine and their minds to sway. This kind of power is not enough for me to use my treasure. After Lin Sun was knocked back, he wasn't injured. He leaped up and the light blue light around him became even more intense. It was as if a storm had formed as he used the 9 strikes of shaking the heavens to fight against Ling Tianho. This was destined to be a peak battle. The two young geniuses fought in the martial arts field. Various secret techniques flashed and shook the world. They used their real killing moves, and it was like a life and death battle. It could be said to be world-shaking. Some of the older generation were shocked. They thought that even they didn't have such shocking power when they were young. Boom! Lin Sun's fist shattered the void and hit the halberd. His other fist was aimed at Ling Tianho's face, but it was easily blocked by Ling Tianho's palm. There was a bright roar, and it was dazzling and shocking to the soul. Although Lin Sun was knocked back several times, he was very strong. The more he fought, the more courageous he became. No one could imagine what kind of terrifying power was hidden in his skinny body. Ling Tianho was even more amazing. His killing intent was like a tide as he swung the halberd. He was domineering and unparalleled. So strong, everyone exclaimed. Some of the young geniuses like Bai Lingshi, Song Yi, Yun Fuchen, and Yu Qizhe revealed serious expressions. Lin Sun's performance had surprised them time and time again. Ling Tianho's combat strength was terrifying, and it made them feel dread. In fact, anyone with a bit of insight could see that this battle could be considered a battle between the top of the Sea of Soul's realm and the entire Xiao Empire. As for Lin Sun and Ling Tianho, both of them could be considered stunning. The kind of aura that could devour mountains and rivers was top-notch, even among the geniuses of the younger generation. Boom! Looking from afar, Lin Sun was surrounded by a blue light that was like a storm, while Ling Tianho was surrounded by a raging blood-colored killing intent. The two of them fought fiercely like gods. Bang! 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 The sounds of the collisions were like thunder. Lin Sun was constantly knocked back, and his clothes were stained with blood. Ling Tianho's combat strength was indeed too terrifying. The golden halberd in his hand was like a divine weapon. Once it was used, it would be extremely powerful. Lin Sun was indeed at a disadvantage when fighting barehanded. But even so, Ling Tianho couldn't suppress Lin Sun for a while. It had to be said that Lin Sun's tenacity was indeed terrifying. Everyone realized that no matter what the result was, from today on, Lin Sun had successfully risen among the geniuses in the Forbidden City. Not only could he defeat Qi Songfeng, but he could also fight against Ling Tianho. This was enough to make him famous. Lin Sun, I only use 70% of my strength, but you're almost at your limit. I'm very disappointed, Ling Tianho shouted. His long hair fluttered in the wind, his eyes shot out blood-colored lightning, and his body was filled with monstrous killing intent that shook the void. He walked in the air, and the golden halberd was as bright as the sun and the moon. He fiercely stabbed Lin Sun's chest, creating a deafening roar. Bang! Another shocking collision occurred. Lin Sun dodged this attack and punched the golden halberd. Ling Tianho didn't care. He smiled and was about to wave the halberd to push Lin Sun back. Who would have thought that the halberd would suddenly sink and a terrifying force would rush toward him like a tide? With a bang, his hand became numb and his blood churned. The golden halberd almost fell out of his hand. Ling Tianho's pupils shrank. He could feel that the power of Lin Sun's attack had increased a lot. This guy's power was becoming stronger. Could it be that he had been enduring this whole time? Kill! Without any hesitation, Ling Tianho waved the halberd and charged forward. Rumble, his golden halberd shined, and endless golden ripples spread out, shaking the void. Everyone was shocked as they recognized that this was a terrifying secret technique. Golden Vortex Spear, an unparalleled inheritance that came from the royal family. Its power was unfathomable. However, what shocked everyone was that even though Ling Tianho's power had increased, Lin Sun wasn't immediately suppressed. On the practice field, Lin Sun and Ling Tianho were fighting fiercely. Although Lin Sun's clothes were dyed in blood and he was constantly being pushed back, his power was becoming stronger and stronger. Lin Sun was like a volcano that had been accumulating power for a long time, and his power continued to increase. Everyone was shocked. Wasn't this Lin Sun a bit too heaven-defying? Even Ling Tianho frowned and felt a bit surprised. Lin Sun was only at the mid-stage of the Spirit Sea realm. Lin Sun had lost to him in terms of cultivation and was constantly being suppressed by him. Who would have thought that this guy would become stronger and stronger? How is this possible? Ling Tianho was shocked and became even more angry. He used all his power to suppress Lin Sun. Boom! Under Ling Tianho's furious suppression, a wound appeared on Lin Sun's chest in just a moment. Blood flowed out, and Lin Sun's stomach was almost cut open. This shocked many people. Ling Tianho was finally angry and was going to deal with Lin Sun. People like Hua Wuyo, Hua Wuhun, Song Zhe, and Song Chong had cheered in excitement. They couldn't wait for this to happen. Lu Qingyan was secretly anxious. This guy is too stupid. Why hasn't he used any treasures yet? Don't tell me that a spirit tattoo master like him doesn't even have a weapon. Is the outcome going to be decided? The other big shots were also attracted by Lin Sun and closely watched. To be honest, the fact that Lin Sun was able to last this long without any weapons had already surprised them. Now that Lin Sun was finally injured, they inexplicably felt relieved. If even Ling Tianho couldn't deal with Lin Sun, then it would be too scary. Chapter 436. Boom! While Lin Sun was injured, Ling Tianho didn't hesitate to sweep the halberd. The golden light covered the sky and was filled with terrifying killing intent. Lin Sun dodged and no longer faced the halberd head-on. Ling Tianho saw this as a sign that he couldn't hold on any longer, so his attacks became even more violent. His golden halberd was like a blade that could hold up the heavens. It gave off a mysterious golden light and was invincible. Everyone exclaimed and was shocked. Too strong. As a top cultivator in the Spirit Sea realm, the power Ling Tianho displayed was enough to shame most cultivators at the same level. Lin Sun seemed to really be unable to hold on any longer and had to dodge. While he was dodging, he even took out the 9 Dragon Spirit Wine and drank it like crazy. Many people saw this and couldn't help but go into an uproar. Lin Sun wasn't pretending to be heroic. He had clearly consumed too much energy and had to replenish it. This kid was fighting Qi Cangfeng, and now he is fighting Ling Tianho. His physical strength must have been exhausted. Otherwise, he wouldn't be in such a sorry state. He is using the 9 Dragon Spirit Wine to replenish his physical strength. The power of the wine is unparalleled. Is he not afraid of dying? He is playing with fire. Once he can't refine it, not to mention restoring his physical strength, he might even go berserk. Who dares to take such a risk in a battle? Everyone looked at Lin Sun with pity. Not only was he injured, but he was also using the wine to replenish his physical strength. This was a sign that he couldn't hold on any longer. Ha ha ha, Lin Sun, if you kneel down and admit defeat, I won't make it difficult for you anymore. How about it? Ling Tianho laughed. He was like a god of slaughter and was extremely arrogant. He charged at Lin Sun with the halberd and forced Lin Sun to the point where he couldn't dodge. Bang! Almost at the same time, Lin Sun threw out the wine jug. Then he no longer dodged and charged forward. He was still empty-handed, and his clothes were still stained with blood. However, at this moment, it was as if he was going to fight to the death. He suddenly reached out and grabbed the halberd. Is he trying to make both sides suffer? Many people exclaimed. Rumble. A terrifying force came from the halberd like a flood. A hint of coldness appeared on the corner of Ling Tianho's mouth. This attack contained his full strength, yet Lin Sun dared to try it with his bare hands. He was destined to be seriously injured. Everyone also saw that this blow was too strong. Lin Sun's move was like a mantis trying to stop a chariot. Lu Qingyin's heart was suddenly in her throat. She was so nervous that she couldn't bear to watch it anymore. However, an unexpected scene occurred. Ling Tianho's terrifying golden halberd was caught by Lin Sun and wasn't even pushed back a bit. Everyone was horrified. What was going on? Almost at the same time, Ling Tianho's cold smile froze. Boom! Lin Sun's body suddenly burst out an unprecedented horrible power. His whole body seemed to be reborn from the fire. Compared with just now, his momentum was more than twice as strong. Not good. A sense of danger suddenly appeared in Ling Tianho's heart. He subconsciously jumped into the air and swung his right leg. His leg was like a golden pillar that had the power to break the world as it mercilessly smashed toward Lin Sun's head. If Lin Sun was hit, his head would definitely explode into a pile of blood and turn into a headless corpse. Lin Sun's right hand firmly gripped the halberd, and his left hand formed a fist. His fist was like a hammer as it smashed toward Ling Tianho's right leg. Bang! There was a sound of collision and a burst of light. Ling Tianho let out a painful cry as his right leg cracked, and the sound of bones breaking could be heard. Everyone was shocked and couldn't believe their eyes. Just now, Lin Sun was clearly in a weakened state and was about to be defeated. Who would have thought that not only would he grab Ling Tianho's halberd, but he would also break Ling Tianho's right leg? How is this possible? Ling Tianho didn't hesitate to retreat under this sudden change. He exerted force in his hand to take back the halberd. Who would have thought that Lin Sun's hand that was holding the halberd would suddenly exert force and pull Ling Tianho's body into the air? Then Lin Sun mercilessly smashed Ling Tianho into the ground. There was a loud bang. Ling Tianho was caught off guard, and his body was smashed into the ground, causing dust to fill the air. He coughed up blood, and his handsome and devilishly handsome face turned ashen. Hiss! Everyone sucked in a breath of cold air. This was too cruel. You dare to make me kneel with just this little bit of skill? Lin Sun's voice was calm as he charged down with the halberd that originally belonged to Ling Tianho. He has advanced. He has advanced to the late stage of the Sea Territory realm. Finally, a big shot noticed something. His expression changed, and he could no longer remain calm. It wasn't like breaking through in battle hadn't happened before, but it was extremely dangerous. If one wasn't careful, they would die. But it was obvious that Lin Sun had succeeded. No wonder his combat power suddenly became so terrifying. It turns out that he made another breakthrough in his cultivation. Monster, this brat is simply heaven-defying. I understand now. The 9-dragon spirit he drank wasn't to replenish his strength, but to use it to break through. The crowd was in an uproar, and everyone was shocked. No one could have imagined that Lin Sun was trying to find an opportunity to break through during his battle with Ling Tianho. Previously, it seemed like he was being suppressed and couldn't resist. However, in this life and death battle, it stimulated his potential and allowed him to break through in one fell swoop. It turns out that he didn't use the treasure because he wanted to hone his cultivation in battle to achieve his goal of breaking through. Lu Qingyan was startled. Lu Qingyan was stunned. She couldn't imagine that Lin Sun was so bold. Wasn't he worried that if something went wrong, he would die? Of course, now that Lin Sun had successfully broken through, just thinking about the danger he had experienced was enough to make people tremble. Scram! On the ground, Ling Tianho was angry. His long hair flew in the air. Before Lin Sun could attack, he jumped up and spat out a terrifying bloodlight. The bloodlight was covered in mysterious runes that looked like skeletons. It gave off a terrifying smell of blood that dyed the void red. Lin Sun raised his eyebrows and swept with the halberd. With a roar of collision, Lin Sun felt a pain in his right arm, and the golden halberd was shaken out of his hand. After this attack, Lin Sun finally saw clearly that the terrifying bloodlight was a talisman. It was a terrifying, killing weapon like the heaven-shattering orb in his hand. Fortunately, this thing could only be used once. Boom! At this time, Ling Tianho took the opportunity to take back the halberd. His body was covered in a golden glow, and his momentum returned to before. You brat, to make me waste a blood spirit talisman, you can lose without regret. His expression was cold, and he went completely berserk as he launched a storm of attacks. It has to be said that Ling Tianho's combat strength was indeed terrifying. Even when he was injured by Lin Sun, just now he didn't fall. Kill! At this moment, Lin Sun also showed his might. The shadow of an ice dragon appeared behind him. His power was like that of a god that could control mountains and rivers. The two of them began to fight again, causing everyone's mind to tremble. They held their breath, and their faces were filled with shock. Too strong. In this battle, Lin Sun and Ling Tianho were like two heavenly geniuses fighting against each other. The power they displayed could be described as heaven-shaking and godly. So what if you've advanced? You're not qualified to compete with me, Ling Tianho shouted. His eyes were as cold as blood lightning. He had become even more powerful. However, Lin Sun couldn't be underestimated. After advancing to the late stage of the Spirit Sea realm, his overall strength had undergone a transformation. He was adapting to and controlling his new power. He was using Ling Tianho as a whetstone. A moment later, boom! The halberd swung down. Ling Tianho became more and more courageous as he fought. His hair fluttered in the wind, and his body shined with a dazzling golden light. Lose! He let out a roar, but the halberd let out a sonorous sound. It was as if it had a mind of its own as it stabbed toward Lin Sun with its most powerful attack. The void trembled, and a strange phenomenon appeared. This spear was so amazing that it seemed like it could steal the world. Many people couldn't sit still and were terrified. Even the big shots were shaken. Ling Tianho's strength surprised them all. Lin Sun's expression changed slightly. He also didn't expect Ling Tianho's strength to be so terrifying. It was obvious that Ling Tianho hadn't used his full strength when fighting him. It was as if this attack had merged with the power of the heavens and the earth. There was even a faint hint of domain within it. What was the unity of man and nature? This was it. Otherwise, how could this attack be so amazing and contain the power of the heavens? With a bang, Lin Sun counterattacked, but it only took a moment before it was crushed by this attack. The golden halberd charged toward Lin Sun as if it was nothing. Ling Tianho shouted, "What will you use to fight me?" Ling Tianho shouted. He had already reached the peak of the Spirit Sea realm and had reached the peak of the Spirit Sea realm. After 5 years of fighting on the battlefield, he had the belief that he was invincible. Clang! At this moment, Lin Sun's expression finally changed. He took out the Earth-grade spirit treasure he had personally refined, the purple soul saber. This guy finally used his treasure. Many people exclaimed. From a moment he fought Qi Songfeng until now, Lin Sun had been empty-handed. This made people wonder if he had prepared a weapon. But now everyone knew that it wasn't that Lin Sun didn't have a treasure. It was that he hadn't used it yet. You only used it now? It's too late. Kneel for me. Ling Tianho's voice was cold, and his aura became even more powerful. The bloodlight from his body filled the sky like a god of slaughter. At this moment, he was truly terrifying. His aura locked on Lin's son and was going to suppress him. However, almost at the same time, a blade flashed. In an instant, it was as if the eternal night had arrived. Countless stars fell from the sky, creating a bright flash of light. It was as if everything in the world was going to collapse at this moment. Reaching for the stars. At this moment, Lin Sun finally used his killing move. The audience was silent. Everyone was shocked, and their pupils dilated. What kind of saber technique was this? What a terrifying domain. Boom! Before anyone could react, an earth-shattering collision sound rang out, causing the entire martial arts field to tremble. The spirit array was activated, producing resplendent spirit inscription symbols to offset the terrifying impact. As the smoke and dust filled the air, Ling Tianho let out a miserable scream. His body flew backward, and he spat out blood. At the same time, Lin Sun's calm voice echoed in the field. "I want to see who will kneel first."